There are crimes that detectives expect to solve. And then there are crimes that refuse to make sense. This was one of those cases. It began on a quiet street where nothing unusual ever seemed to happen. Willow Lane was the kind of neighborhood where people still waved at their neighbors. Lawns were trimmed every Saturday. Porch lights came on at dusk. Children rode bicycles until dinner, and the loudest sound most evenings was the distant bark of a dog. No one imagined a murder had already happened. For 2 days, 78-year-old Thomas Walker sat dead inside his own home. The television turned itself off at midnight, just as it did every night. The thermostat lowered the temperature before sunrise. The porch light switched on at exactly 6:45. Everything inside the house followed its routine, except the man who lived there. When Thomas failed to answer his phone, his daughter assumed he had forgotten to charge it. When he missed his usual morning walk to the corner market, the cashier figured he wasn't feeling well. By the second day, concern turned into fear. His daughter drove to Willow Lane. His pickup truck was still parked in the driveway. The mailbox was overflowing. She knocked, no answer. She called his phone. From somewhere deep inside the house, she heard it ringing. The front door was locked. The back door was locked. Every window was latched from the inside. She walked the entire property twice. Nothing was broken. Nothing looked disturbed. She called 911. Firefighters forced open the front door. The moment it swung inward, the home's security alarm exploded into life. The system had still been armed. Police cleared the house one room at a time. The kitchen looked untouched. The bedroom was neatly made. The dining table held yesterday's newspaper. Then they reached the study. Thomas Walker sat in his leather chair facing the fireplace. His reading glasses rested beside an open book. A cup of tea sat cold on the side table. At first glance, he looked asleep. Then an officer noticed the blood. Thomas had been stabbed once. There was no weapon, no signs of a struggle, no forced entry, no hidden intruder waiting inside. Every exit remained locked. The security cameras surrounding the property showed no one entering, no one leaving. Not for nearly 48 hours. Detectives checked the recordings again and again. Nothing. The security logs matched the footage perfectly. According to every piece of evidence, no one had entered the house after Thomas Walker died. And no one had left. An impossible murder. A sealed house. A killer who seemed to vanish without opening a single door. Somewhere inside that quiet little home, one tiny detail had been overlooked. It would become the first thread in a mystery so carefully constructed that every answer only led to another question. And before it was over, Detective Emma Hayes and her team would discover that the locked house was only the beginning. If you enjoy carefully crafted crime mysteries where every clue matters and every investigation rewards careful attention, subscribe to Midnight Casefiles. New cases arrive every week. Now let's begin. By 8 o'clock Monday morning, the rain had finally stopped. The clouds lingered overhead, leaving Willow Lane damp and unusually quiet. Detective Emma Hayes parked across the street, instead of directly in front of the crime scene. It wasn't habit. It was perspective. She preferred seeing a neighborhood before becoming part of it. She watched an elderly couple walking a golden retriever. A mail carrier moved from house to house. Across the street, someone trimmed a hedge with careful, deliberate strokes. Life had already returned to normal. Except for one house. Ben Torres stepped out of the passenger seat carrying 2 coffees. You do realize they make these closer to headquarters. Emma accepted one. They don't make this view. Ben followed her eyes. It still looks peaceful. That's what bothers me. The yellow crime scene tape fluttered gently in the morning breeze. Nothing about the modest brick house suggested violence. Emma had learned long ago that appearances rarely survived the first day of an investigation. Officer Ryan Collins met them near the front walk. "Morning, detectives." Emma smiled politely. "How's the neighborhood?" Collins shrugged. "Nervous." "Anyone talk over the weekend?" "Everyone." "Anything useful?" "Mostly rumors." Emma wasn't surprised. Rumors arrived at every murder scene before detectives did. She stepped onto the porch. The damaged front door remained exactly where the fire department had left it after forcing entry. Lisa Grant was photographing the splintered frame. She looked up. "Morning." Emma nodded. "Walk me through the entry." Lisa pointed toward the deadbolt. "The firefighters forced it at 3:29 Saturday afternoon. The alarm went off immediately." "So it was armed?" Lisa nodded. "Until they broke the door." Emma looked at the lock. No signs anyone tampered with it. None. She crouched beside the strike plate. No replacement screws. No fresh paint. No repairs. Nothing suggested the lock itself had been manipulated. Ben looked inside. Ready. Emma took one last look at the street before stepping through the doorway. The house smelled exactly like old books and polished wood. No lingering scent of bleach. No heavy air freshener. Nothing that suggested someone had tried to erase evidence. Daniel Mercer stood in the hallway studying a laser scan of the house on his tablet. Without looking up, he said, "I've got good news." Ben sighed. "I don't believe you." Daniel finally looked up. "The coffee machine still works." Ben stared at him. "We're investigating a homicide." "I know." Daniel raised his paper cup. "I'm surviving one." Even Emma couldn't quite hide the corner of a smile. Daniel noticed. That almost counted. It didn't. Close enough. The brief moment passed. Daniel's expression settled into complete professionalism. "The three-dimensional scan is finished." He rotated the model. No hidden rooms. No concealed stairways. No structural voids large enough for someone to hide. Ben folded his arms. "So no secret passages." Daniel shrugged. "Unless Scooby-Doo gets assigned to the case." Lisa rolled her eyes. "I liked you better 30 seconds ago." He smiled. "I've heard that before." Emma turned back to the model. The measurements. Accurate within a fraction of an inch. No unexplained spaces. No. She trusted Daniel's work. If he said the house had no hidden compartments, it almost certainly didn't. Almost, Kevin Chen entered carrying a rugged laptop. "I finished copying the security system." Emma looked up. "Anything? No evidence of hacking?" "No." "Remote access?" "No." "Firmware altered?" "No." "The timestamps?" "Consistent." Ben rubbed his forehead. "So the system is telling the truth." Kevin nodded. "As far as I can prove." Emma disliked that answer. Not because it was wrong, because it left so few possibilities. They moved into the study. Morning light filtered weakly through the closed curtains. Without Thomas Walker in the chair, the room felt strangely incomplete. Dr. Evelyn Shaw stood near the fireplace reviewing autopsy photographs. "I've got preliminary findings." Emma nodded. "Go ahead." The wound entered between the fourth and fifth ribs. She pointed to the image. One controlled strike. Depth, approximately 4 inches. Weapon. Likely a narrow kitchen or hunting knife. Ben asked. Could the victim have walked after being stabbed? For a few seconds. Long enough to move. Possibly. Long enough to clean the room. No. Emma looked around again. Everything remained almost unnaturally tidy. Books aligned. Pens parallel on the desk. A blanket folded neatly over the chair. Nothing appeared rushed. Nothing looked interrupted. Evelyn continued. No bruising. No defensive wounds. No hesitation injuries. So he never fought back. Or never saw the attack coming. Emma quietly considered that. Thomas either trusted the person standing in front of him, or the attack happened so quickly that he had no chance to react. Sarah Walker arrived shortly afterward. She looked exhausted. Dark circles framed her eyes. Emma met her in the living room. "I'm sorry we have to meet under these circumstances." Sarah nodded weakly. "I just want to know who did this. We're going to do everything we can." Sarah looked toward the study. "My father loved that room. He spent every evening there. Reading and working crossword puzzles." Emma glanced toward the bookshelf. "Did he usually keep the house this organized?" Sarah almost smiled. "He would have straightened a picture frame if it was crooked by half an inch." That detail stayed with Emma. A man obsessed with order. Order often made disorder easier to spot. After Sarah left, Emma returned to the study alone. She stood exactly where Thomas's chair had been, then slowly turned in a full circle. She imagined his final evening. Dinner, tea, a book, silence. Someone arrives, or perhaps someone was already there. Her eyes drifted across the room once more. Desk, fireplace, window, then back to the bookshelf. Something felt off, not obvious, just enough to make her stop walking. She crouched. The bottom shelf was spotless. The floor beneath it wasn't. There was a narrow strip of dust extending several inches beneath the shelf. Except for one perfectly clean rectangle, about 12 inches wide, 8 inches deep. Emma didn't touch it. She simply stared. Ben walked in. "What are you looking at?" And Emma pointed. "See that?" He knelt beside her. "The dust." Not the dust. He looked closer. Then he saw it. Something had been sitting beneath the bookshelf, long enough to prevent dust from collecting, recently enough that the surrounding dust hadn't settled back. Whatever it was gone now. Lisa joined them with her camera. "I don't remember photographing anything there." "Because there wasn't anything there," Emma said quietly. Daniel leaned into the room. "What'd I miss?" And Emma never took her eyes off the empty space. "The first thing we know for certain." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Witches?" She finally stood. "The killer didn't just leave this house. They left with something." Silence settled over the room. For the first time since the investigation began, the impossible murder had produced its first tangible question. What had been hidden beneath Thomas Walker's bookshelf? And why was it important enough to risk taking it from a house that no one was ever supposed to enter? By mid-morning, the investigation had spread beyond the walls of Thomas Walker's home. The house could only answer so many questions. People answered the rest. Emma and Ben started with the one place Thomas never seemed to miss. Miller's Corner Market sat 3 blocks from Willow Lane. The bell above the door chimed as they stepped inside. Frank Miller looked up from behind the register. He recognized them immediately. "You must be here about Tom." Emma nodded. "You knew him well." Frank smiled sadly. "For nearly 20 years. He was here almost every morning. Always the same order. Cup of black coffee, local newspaper, banana if they looked fresh." Ben glanced around the small store. "When did you see him last?" Frank didn't hesitate. "Wednesday morning." "What time?" "Just after 7. He seemed normal." Frank thought for a moment. Quiet. Was always quiet. But this was different. Different how? He kept checking his watch. Emma made a note. Did he say why? No. He finished his coffee in about 5 minutes. That's unusual. Frank nodded. Tom liked to sit. Read the headlines. Complain about baseball. Ben smiled. Everyone complains about baseball. Frank laughed softly. Fair enough. Emma asked, "Did anyone meet him?" "No." "Anyone speak with him?" A young guy asked if the seat next to him was taken. "What happened?" Tom politely said he was leaving. Emma looked up. "Can you describe the man?" Frank frowned. Late 20s, maybe? Dark jacket. Baseball cap. I never got a good look. You've never seen him before? I don't think so. Ben exchanged a quick glance with Emma. Security cameras. Frank pointed toward the ceiling. Everything records. Kevin arrived 20 minutes later carrying his forensic drive. Within minutes, the footage filled the monitor behind the counter. There was Thomas Walker. 7:12 in the morning. Exactly as Frank described. He bought his coffee, picked up a newspaper, smiled politely at the cashier. Nothing unusual. Then a young man entered. Cap pulled low, hands in his pockets. He walked toward Thomas, paused, spoke briefly. Thomas looked up, shook his head once, collected his newspaper, and left. The young man watched him go, then turned around Arndrar and walked straight back out the front door. He never bought anything. Daniel leaned closer to the screen. Either that's the world's fastest shopping trip, or he wasn't here for groceries. Ben nodded. He came for Thomas. Emma replayed the clip 3 more times. The stranger never touched Thomas, never threatened him, never even sat down. But there was something unsettling about the exchange. The man seemed disappointed, almost as though he had expected a different answer. Kevin froze the frame. I'll enhance what I can. Face. Maybe. License plate. If we're lucky. Daniel folded his arms. I'd settle for eyebrows. Emma ignored him. What happened after Thomas left? Kevin skipped ahead. Thomas walked toward Willow Lane. Alone, the stranger remained outside the store for another 30 seconds. Then, he walked in the opposite direction. No vehicle. No obvious destination. Just gone. Back at the house, Lisa had finished processing the study. Emma joined her. Anything from the clean rectangle? Lisa nodded. Actually, she held up several photographs. The dust tells us something. Emma waited. The object wasn't moved often. What makes you say that? There are no drag marks. It was lifted and removed carefully. So whoever took it knew exactly what they wanted. Emma looked toward the empty space beneath the bookshelf. Not random theft, not panic, purpose. Officer Collins entered carrying a small notebook sealed inside an evidence bag. We found this in the kitchen drawer. Emma accepted it carefully. A simple daily planner. Nothing expensive. Thomas had written appointments in neat block letters. Monday, doctor. Tuesday, pay utility bill. Wednesday, 7 a.m. coffee. 9 a.m. pharmacy. 1 p.m. trim hedges. 6 p.m. dinner. Nothing after that. Ben flipped through the remaining pages. He planned everything. Emma nodded. A routine. The kind that makes changes easier to notice. One thing immediately stood out. Thomas had written nearly every completed task with a small blue check mark. Wednesday morning, coffee, checked. Pharmacy, checked. Then, nothing. The page remained blank after 9:23 that morning. Ben looked puzzled. If he always checked things off. Emma finished the thought. Something interrupted his day. Kevin walked into the room. I've mapped his phone. Anything useful. He barely used it. No calls Wednesday afternoon. No texts. No emails. So he just disappeared into his routine. Pretty much. Daniel leaned against the doorway. You know what's bothering me? Ben looked at him. Besides your inability to drink bad coffee. Daniel ignored him. A man who plans every hour doesn't suddenly stop planning. Emma slowly nodded. He stopped writing for a reason? Exactly? Ben looked toward the planner. Or someone stopped him. The afternoon was spent knocking on doors. Most neighbors had little to offer. Thomas kept to himself. He was polite, predictable, reliable. No loud arguments. No strange visitors. No suspicious vehicles. By late afternoon, they reached the last house on the street. An elderly woman answered before Emma finished knocking. My name's Linda Harris. Emma introduced herself. We're reviewing Wednesday evening. Linda looked genuinely upset. I keep thinking I should have said something sooner. Emma stayed quiet. What happened? Linda looked toward Thomas's house. I heard a noise. Ben asked. What kind of noise? She hesitated. Not a scream. Not glass breaking. It sounded like else. She searched for the words. A heavy piece of furniture sliding across the floor. Emma immediately thought of the study. What time? Just before 10. You looked outside. I did. Did you see anyone? No. Any lights? The study light was on. Anything else? Linda shook her head. I almost ignored it. But Tom never rearranged furniture at night. Emma felt a chill. She thanked Linda and returned to the house. Daniel met them on the porch. You look like you found something. Emma looked past him toward the study window. Maybe. They walked inside together. Emma stopped in the center of the study. She imagined the room exactly as Linda described. Quiet, lamp glowing. Then, something heavy sliding. Not falling. She slowly turned toward the bookshelf. Then toward Thomas's desk, then back again. Her eyes narrowed. What? Ben asked. Emma looked at Daniel. How much does that bookshelf weigh? Daniel blinked. A lot. Can we move it? Lisa looked surprised. You think we should? Emma never looked away from the wall. If our witness heard furniture moving, then I want to know what was behind the only piece of furniture in this room that has never been moved. No one spoke. Because suddenly, the locked house mystery wasn't just about how the killer escaped. It was about what they were searching for before they ever left. By Tuesday morning, the study had become the center of the investigation. Everything else in the house had been examined twice. The study still felt unfinished. Emma stood with her hands in her jacket pockets while Lisa photographed the large oak bookshelf from every angle. Ready? Ben asked. Lisa nodded. You can move it. Daniel rubbed his hands together. I've always wanted to push expensive furniture in the name of justice. Ben looked at him. That's an oddly specific dream. Daniel shrugged. I have hobbies. The four of them carefully eased the heavy bookshelf away from the wall. It resisted at first, then slid forward with a low scrape across the hardwood floor. Everyone stopped. The sound echoed through the room. Emma looked toward Ben. That's probably what Mrs. Harris heard. Ben nodded. It matches. Lisa immediately began photographing the exposed wall. At first glance, nothing, just painted drywall. Then Emma noticed it. Flashlight. Daniel handed her one. A faint square outline appeared near the baseboard, about 14 inches wide, 10 inches tall. Someone had patched the wall years ago. The paint matched perfectly. Unless you knew where to look, you'd never notice it. Lisa knelt beside it. This repair isn't recent. How old? Emma asked. Lisa examined the edges. The drywall compound has completely cured. The paint has aged. I'm guessing at least 15 years. Daniel crouched beside her. And somebody opened it again. Emma looked closer. Fresh scratches surrounded two tiny finishing nails. Tiny flecks of white paint rested on the floor. Recent. Very recent. Ben frowned. So somebody opened a hidden compartment, then closed it again. Emma finished. Lisa carefully removed the small panel. Behind it, nothing. Just an empty cavity between the wall studs. Daniel leaned forward. Well, Ben sighed. Don't say it. Daniel looked into the empty space. The good news is Ben closed his eyes. Please don't. We've officially confirmed that walls can, in fact, be empty. Even Lisa laughed. Emma smiled despite herself. Anything useful. Daniel's expression immediately became serious. Actually, he pointed his flashlight deeper inside. There, wedged in the back corner. Tiny wood splinters. Emma reached for tweezers. Lisa stopped her. I've got it. A few moments later, she placed several thin fragments into an evidence bag. Ben studied them. Wood? Lisa nodded. Looks like walnut. Emma glanced around the study. There isn't any walnut furniture in this room. Daniel looked thoughtful. So whatever was hidden here was probably inside a wooden box. Emma nodded slowly. And whoever killed Thomas Walker took it. Kevin entered carrying a printed report. I've got something from the security company? Emma accepted it. The alarm history? Kevin nodded. The system has been installed for 11 years. No service interruptions. No power failures. No unexplained resets. So it's reliable. Very. Emma kept reading. Then stopped. Wait. Ben noticed her expression. What? This system records every time someone disarms it. Kevin nodded. Correct. Emma looked back at the report. It was disarmed Wednesday evening. Ben smiled. Finally. She shook her head. No. It wasn't. What? It was armed at 9:53. It was never disarmed before responders forced the door. Silence, Daniel frowned. So, the victim either armed it himself, or the killer did. Ben rubbed the back of his neck. And either option creates another problem. Emma folded the report. Exactly? Outside, another vehicle pulled into the driveway. Officer Collins walked over. The victim's son just arrived. David Walker climbed slowly from a rental SUV. He looked exhausted after what had clearly been a long flight. His eyes immediately settled on the crime scene tape. He stood silently for several seconds before approaching. Emma introduced herself. I'm Detective Hayes. David nodded. I know why you're here. I'm sorry for your loss. He swallowed. So am I. Emma watched him carefully. Grief looked different on everyone. Some cried. Some talked. Some simply became quiet. David belonged to the third group. They sat together in the dining room. When did you last speak with your father? Sunday. Phone call. Wes. Everything normal? David nodded. We talked about baseball. Emma almost smiled. Apparently he liked complaining about it. David laughed once. He loved complaining about it. The laugh disappeared almost immediately. Ben leaned forward. When was the last time you visited? Christmas. Any disagreements? David hesitated. No. Emma noticed. You paused. He sighed. We argued years ago. What about? Stupid family stuff. What kind of family stuff? He looked down. I moved to Colorado. My father wanted me closer. That's it. Pretty much. Emma didn't press. Not yet. People rarely lied outright during first interviews. They simply left things out. After David left the room, Ben quietly said, He's hiding something. Emma nodded. I know. I don't think it's murder. Daniel appeared in the doorway carrying a clear evidence bag. Found something interesting. Inside the bag, Thomas Walker's house keys. Emma frowned. They were missing from the entry table. Exactly? Where'd you find them? Daniel smiled. You'll like this. I usually don't when you say that. They were inside the kitchen trash. Ben looked confused. Who throws away their own house keys? No one. Emma answered quietly. Daniel nodded. My thoughts exactly. If the killer locked the house, they would have needed the keys. Emma slowly looked toward the front hallway. Then they got rid of them. But why not take them? Ben asked. Emma answered before anyone else could. Because taking them creates a question. Throwing them away creates an answer. Daniel grinned. Now you're thinking like someone who watches too many detective shows. And Emma gave him a look. I solved them. Fair point. Just then Evelyn Shaw called. Emma answered immediately. What have you got? Evelyn sounded unusually thoughtful. I've finished toxicology. No poison. No sedatives. Emma waited. But fear is something strange. What? The victim ate dinner about 2 hours before death. We knew that. Yes. But there was something in his stomach that wasn't food. Emma stopped writing. What was it? A tiny amount of fresh cedar sawdust. And Emma frowned. Sawdust. Very fine. Almost microscopic. Ben looked puzzled. How does someone eat sawdust? Evelyn answered before Emma could ask. That's exactly what I'd like to know. The call ended. No one spoke. Emma looked slowly toward the empty cavity behind the bookshelf. Fresh wood splinters, a missing wooden container, and now, cedar sawdust inside the victim's stomach. Whatever Thomas Walker had been doing before he died. It wasn't simply reading in his favorite chair. Somewhere during his final evening, he had opened something made of wood. And whatever had been inside it had vanished without a trace. The first rule of every homicide investigation was simple. Never assume a clue is important. Never assume it isn't. The cedar sawdust could mean everything, or absolutely nothing. Emma preferred to find out before deciding. Just after sunrise Wednesday, Daniel was already waiting outside the county forensic lab with 2 cups of coffee. Ben stepped out of the SUV. "You've been here long." Daniel handed him a cup, long enough to discover vending machine coffee has officially declared war on humanity. Ben took a sip. "You might actually be right. I usually am. You just remind us constantly." Daniel smiled. "It's part of my charm." Emma climbed out of the driver's seat. "Tell me you've got something better than coffee." Daniel's grin disappeared. "I do." Inside the lab, Dr. Evelyn Shaw met them beside a microscope. She placed a small evidence slide onto the illuminated stage. The particles recovered from Thomas Walker's stomach weren't construction sawdust. Emma looked through the eyepiece. "What am I looking at?" "Cedar, specifically. Hand-finished aromatic cedar." Ben frowned. "How can you tell?" Evelyn pointed toward another prepared sample. "The oils. They're commonly used in handcrafted storage boxes, cigar humidors, jewelry boxes, document chests." Daniel folded his arms. "So Thomas wasn't eating his furniture?" "No." Evelyn smiled slightly. "He had very recent contact with unfinished cedar." Emma straightened. "He inhaled it? Possibly? Or?" Evelyn hesitated. "He opened something." Emma and Ben exchanged a look. The wooden box. Suddenly, it wasn't just a theory. It was becoming evidence. Back at Willow Lane, Lisa had finished processing the hidden wall cavity. She held up 3 enlarged photographs. "We recovered partial prints." Emma's eyebrows lifted. "From inside." Lisa nodded. "Mostly Thomas's." "Expected that." "He hid something there." "Exactly." Lisa placed another photograph beside the first. "But there's one more." Emma studied it. "Only half a fingerprint. Clear enough for comparison. Not clear enough for identification. Anyone in the family." Lisa shook her head. "We've already eliminated Sarah." "What about David?" "Not yet." Daniel leaned over the photographs. "So somebody besides Thomas reached into that compartment." Emma nodded. "And recently." Kevin entered carrying another report. "I've been reconstructing Wednesday." He spread several pages across the dining room table. "I combined his phone, store footage, traffic cameras, and neighborhood security systems." Ben looked impressed. "Find anything?" Kevin pointed to the timeline. Thomas left the market at 7:18. He stopped at the pharmacy. Arrived home at 9:41. Emma followed the line with her finger. "And after that? Nothing. No phone activity. No internet. No television. No outgoing messages." Ben frowned. "He just vanished." Kevin nodded. "Until..." He tapped another entry, 9:53. The alarm armed. Exactly 12 minutes. Emma stared at the numbers. 12 minutes? Daniel looked at her. "What?" "He comes home. 12 minutes later the alarm is armed." Ben slowly understood. "Meaning?" "He wasn't settling in for the evening." Emma looked toward the study. "He was doing something." Lisa suddenly spoke. "I found something else." Everyone turned. In the basement. The basement smelled faintly of machine oil and old lumber. Shelves lined one wall. Glass jars filled with screws, paint cans, electrical supplies. Then Emma noticed the workbench, woodworking tools, hand planes, sandpaper, wood glue, several clamps, a small carving knife. Thomas Walker hadn't just read books, he built things. Daniel opened one of the cabinets. Cedar. Emma walked over. Neatly stacked cedar boards rested against the wall. She ran her fingers across one. Fresh, smooth, well-maintained. Ben looked around. So he made boxes. Lisa opened another drawer. Looks like it. Inside were brass hinges, tiny decorative locks, velvet lining. Everything needed to build handcrafted keepsake boxes. Emma slowly turned back toward the stairs. The missing object wasn't bought. It was made. Daniel nodded. Probably by Thomas. Ben looked thoughtful. If he built it himself, then whatever was inside mattered. Emma finished the sentence. A knock at the front door interrupted them. Officer Collins stepped inside. You might want to hear this. Outside stood Frank Miller from the market. I remembered something. Emma invited him inside. Frank looked embarrassed. I should have mentioned it Monday. Take your time. He nodded. When Tom left Wednesday morning, he forgot his newspaper. Emma frowned. Forgot it. That's never happened before. So I ran outside. What did you see? Frank looked toward the window as if replaying the memory. He was standing on the corner, talking to somebody. Emma's expression sharpened. The young man? No. This person was older. How old? 60s maybe. Could you see his face? Frank shook his head. He was wearing one of those wide, brim rain hats. What were they doing? Talking. Arguing? I couldn't hear. Then what happened? Tom took the newspaper. The other man walked away. Which direction? Frank pointed north, toward the old church. Ben immediately wrote it down. How long did they talk? Less than a minute. Emma asked the question that mattered most. Why didn't you tell us? Frank looked genuinely ashamed. I didn't think it mattered. I figured they were just neighbors. Emma smiled reassuringly. Sometimes they are, and sometimes they're not. After Frank left, Daniel looked toward Ben. So now we've got mystery guy number 2. Ben sighed. I was still working on number 1. Daniel grinned. We're collectors now. Emma barely reacted. She was staring at the evidence board. Unknown young man. Unknown older man. Hidden setter box. Wall compartment. Locked house. 1 fingerprint. None of it fit. Not yet. Late that afternoon, Lisa hurried into the incident room carrying another evidence envelope. You need to see this. Emma looked up. The unidentified print. Lisa nodded. I enhanced it. Ben smiled. Get a match. Lisa slowly shook her head. No. Emma frowned. Then what? Lisa carefully placed another fingerprint card beside it. This one came from somewhere else. Where? Lisa took a slow breath. The underside of Thomas Walker's reading chair. Silence filled the room. Emma looked from one print to the other. They were identical. Someone had reached into the hidden wall compartment and had also lifted Thomas Walker's chair. Not pushed it. Not moved it across the floor. Lifted it. Emma's eyes drifted toward the crime scene photographs. The chair. The bloodstain. The position of the body. Something clicked. Not completely. Just enough to unsettle her. She quietly picked up the photograph again. Then she whispered, almost to herself, The chair? Ben looked over. What about it? And Emma didn't answer immediately, because for the first time, she wasn't questioning how the killer escaped. She was beginning to question whether Thomas Walker had actually died where everyone believed he had. Emma Hayes had learned one lesson early in her career. Crime scenes rarely lied. People simply asked them the wrong questions. She stood in the study long before sunrise. The room looked exactly as it had for the past 4 days. Bookshelves, fireplace, leather chair, desk. Nothing had changed, except the way she was looking at it. Ben walked in carrying a file. You've been here since 6. Emma didn't turn around. I keep coming back to the chair. Daniel appeared behind Ben carrying a paper bag. I brought breakfast. Ben peeked inside. Donuts? Daniel looked offended. Evidence donuts. Evidence donuts. If nobody claims them within 24 hours, they become department property. Lisa walked in. That's not remotely how evidence works. Daniel took a bite. It should. Even Ben laughed. Emma shook her head. You two finished. Daniel swallowed. Professionally speaking, yes. Yes. Emma pointed toward the chair. I want to recreate the scene. Within minutes, Lisa positioned a matching chair over the laser, scanned floor markings. Daniel projected the three-dimensional crime scene onto a monitor. Everything aligned perfectly. The chair, the body, the blood stain. Emma slowly walked around it. Freeze the image. Daniel stopped the projection. She crouched beside the stain. What bothers me isn't where the blood is. Ben looked confused. It's where it isn't. Lisa immediately understood. There should be cast off. Emma nodded. If Thomas was stabbed while sitting here, blood should have reached the side of the chair. Lisa compared the photographs. It didn't. Daniel leaned closer. Maybe the knife stayed in? Evelyn Shaw answered from the doorway. It didn't. Everyone turned. She carried another folder. The wound was withdrawn immediately, so there should have been secondary blood spatter. There wasn't. Emma looked back at the stain. So he wasn't stabbed here. Evelyn nodded slowly. I don't believe he was. Silence settled over the room. Ben finally said what everyone was thinking. The body was moved. And Emma stood. Not far, but enough. Daniel looked around the room. So somebody stabbed him, then placed him in the chair, and somehow cleaned up everything else. Lisa added quietly, without leaving obvious evidence. Emma nodded, which means the killer wasn't panicking. They were staging. Kevin entered with another report. I've mapped the blood transfer. He laid several enlarged photographs across the desk. There are microscopic traces on the underside of the chair. Emma looked carefully. Tiny reddish smears. Almost invisible. They lifted it. Kevin nodded. After the blood reached the floor, Daniel folded his arms. So, the chair wasn't in its final position. Ben slowly looked across the study. If the chair moved, then the body moved. And Emma finished the thought. And the crime scene we found was manufactured. For the first time, the impossible murder felt slightly less impossible. Someone had spent time arranging this room. That meant they hadn't been rushing to escape. They'd been creating a story. The question was, why? Lisa called from the kitchen. I think I found something. Everyone joined her. She stood beside the sink. The dish towel rack? Emma looked. One hook was empty. Ben frowned. A missing towel. Lisa nodded. Sarah says there were always two. Emma looked toward the laundry room. Find it. Lisa shook her head. No. Daniel opened a cabinet. No extra towels either. Ben shrugged. Maybe it's in the wash? Lisa answered immediately. Checked. Nothing. Emma thought quietly. A missing towel. A carefully staged room. A body that had been repositioned. The details were beginning to point in the same direction. The killer hadn't come to murder Thomas Walker. The killer had come prepared to leave behind a completely different story. That afternoon, Emma and Ben met David Walker at a small hotel near the airport. David looked exhausted. He hadn't slept. Emma appreciated that he came anyway. We've confirmed you were in Denver Wednesday. David nodded. I told you. We still have to verify everything? I understand. Ben opened his notebook. What time did you leave work? About 5. Anyone see you? My entire office. Flights. I didn't leave Colorado until Saturday morning. Emma already knew the answer. Kevin had confirmed airline records. Security footage placed David at his apartment Wednesday night. Cell tower records matched. Credit card purchases matched. David Walker had a solid alibi. Ben closed the notebook. I don't think you killed your father. David didn't look relieved. He simply stared at the table. Emma noticed. Something else is bothering you. He hesitated. My father called me. When? Wednesday. The Emma leaned forward. What time? A little after lunch. You told us your last call was Sunday. David lowered his eyes. I lied. Why? I didn't think it mattered. Emma remained calm. What did he say? David swallowed hard. He wanted me to come home. Ben asked quietly. Did he say why? No. What exactly did he say? David closed his eyes, trying to remember. David, I found something. Emma wrote every word. I should have looked years ago. He paused. If I'm right, everything changes. The room became very still. Ben spoke softly. What did you think he meant? I thought he was talking about old family papers. Emma looked up. Did he sound frightened? David considered it. No. Excited. That single word changed the atmosphere. Thomas Walker hadn't spent his final day afraid. He'd believed he'd discovered something important. Something worth calling his son about. Emma asked one last question. Did he tell you where he found it? David shook his head. No. He only said. He stopped. Emma waited. He said, I finally opened the box. Emma felt every piece of the investigation shift. The cedar box. The hidden compartment. The missing object. Thomas had opened it. Not years ago. Not months ago. On the day he died. As David left the hotel, Ben quietly said, so whatever was inside that boxos started all of this. Emma nodded. I think so. Her phone vibrated. It was Kevin. I've got a facial recognition hit. Emma stopped walking. The young man from the market. Not him. The older man. Emma's pulse quickened. You identified him. Kevin's voice grew quieter. Sort of. What do you mean? The software matched him to a driver's license photo. Who is he? There was a long pause. Then Kevin said, Emma. The man talking to Thomas Walker on Wednesday morning. Died 14 years ago. Emma didn't answer immediately. She simply stared through the windshield. Kevin. Run that again. I already have. Twice. Ben glanced toward her. What happened? Emma put the call on speaker. Kevin sounded almost annoyed with himself. The facial recognition software produced a 96% confidence match. To who? Ben asked. A man named Richard Hale. Emma recognized the tone in Kevin's voice. It wasn't excitement. It was frustration. He died 14 years ago. Silence filled the SUV. Daniel finally broke it. Well, Ben looked at him. If you say zombies, I'm leaving. Daniel raised both hands. I was going to say paperwork. Emma smiled faintly. I appreciate your restraint. Daniel nodded proudly. I'm growing. Emma shifted the SUV into drive. We're going to headquarters. 20 minutes later, Kevin had every report spread across a conference table. This is Richard Hale. He pointed to an old driver's license photograph. A man in his early 60s. Gray hair, sharp jawline, deep, set eyes. The resemblance to the man outside the market was undeniable. Ben folded his arms. Cause of death. Kevin opened another document. Single vehicle crash. County Road 32. 14 years ago. Emma scanned the death certificate. Body identified by. Kevin answered. His wife. Dental records confirmed. Daniel leaned back. So unless dentistry has become optional, it wasn't him. Emma nodded. Exactly. Captain Olivia Brooks entered the room. I heard we have a ghost. Emma looked up. We have bad software. Kevin immediately objected. My software is excellent? Daniel smiled. There it is. The most emotional sentence Kevin's ever spoken. Kevin ignored him. Emma slid the death certificate toward the captain. The match is probably a relative. Brother? Cousin? Or someone who simply resembles him. Captain Brooks nodded. Good. I'd rather explain a resemblance to the mayor than a resurrection. Ben stood. I'm heading to county records. Emma looked at him. I'll come. Daniel pointed toward himself. What about me? Emma smiled. Try not to start any urban legends. No promises. County records occupied the basement of the old courthouse. Metal shelves stretched in every direction. Boxes, ledgers, maps. The smell of aging paper filled the room. Helen Carter greeted them warmly. Detective Hayes. What can I help you find? Emma placed Richard Hale's photograph on the counter. I need everything you've got. An hour later, the table was covered. Property transfers, tax records, probate filings, utility permits. Ben slowly turned another page. Richard Hale owned land. Emma looked closer. Where? Helen unfolded an old county map. Ben pointed. Willow Lane. Wilhelma frowned. How close? Helen measured with her finger. Directly behind Thomas Walker's property. Ben looked surprised. They were neighbors. Helen nodded. For almost 20 years? Emma made another note. So they knew each other? Almost certainly. Helen reached for another folder. I also found this. An old newspaper clipping. Local manda ice I maishit I jeet keras ash Richard Hale age 64. Survived by wife Eleanor. Emma kept reading. Routine article. Nothing suspicious. Daniel called. You'll love this. Emma answered. That worries me. I've been looking through Thomas's workshop. Find another hidden compartment. No. I found old woodworking projects. So. Daniel paused. One of them has initials burned into the bottom. What initials? R.H. Emma stopped walking. Richard Hale? Looks that way. Ben looked toward her. What is it? Emma covered the phone. Thomas built something for Richard. Ben frowned. So they weren't just neighbors. They were close. They were close. Ooh, Emma returned to the call. Photograph everything. I'm already on it. And Daniel? Yeah. Don't touch anything. I make no promises. Emma sighed. I knew that was coming. Back at the Walker house, Daniel met them in the basement workshop. He carefully turned over a small cedar jewelry box. Burned into the base, R.H. This one wasn't hidden. He opened it. Empty. Lisa joined them. I checked the sawdust. It matches the cedar from Thomas's workshop. Emma slowly walked around the room. Thomas had built boxes for Richard Hale. Richard Hale died 14 years ago. Now someone who looked exactly like Richard appeared the morning Thomas was murdered. None of it made sense. Kevin hurried downstairs. I've got something? He held up a tablet. I expanded my search. Emma looked. Find a relative. No. What then? I searched photographs instead of identification records. The screen displayed dozens of archived newspaper images, community picnics, church fundraisers, veterans events. Then Kevin stopped on one, a charity auction, dated 3 years earlier. Emma stared at the photograph. There stood Thomas Walker, smiling, holding a handcrafted cedar box, standing shoulder to shoulder with Richard Hale, the same Richard Hale, who was officially buried 11 years before that photograph was taken. No one spoke. Ben finally leaned closer. Zoom in. Kevin enlarged the image. The date remained clearly printed beneath it. Verified by the newspaper archive. Not altered. Not edited. Emma felt a chill. Not because she believed the impossible. Because she didn't. There had to be an explanation. There always was. She studied the man's face again. The resemblance was perfect. Too perfect. Then she noticed something no facial recognition software ever could. The man's wedding ring. It wasn't on his left hand. It was on his right. Emma looked at Ben. Our dead man. Isn't Richard Hale? Ben nodded slowly. So, who is he? Emma looked back at the photograph. I don't know. But whoever he is, Thomas Walker trusted him enough to smile beside him. She flipped the photograph over. Sometimes old photographs carried handwritten notes. This one did. Only 4 words, written in faded blue ink. S. The second chance begins. SS. Emma's eyes narrowed. Those weren't the words of a casual acquaintance. They were the words of someone who shared a secret. And for the first time since Thomas Walker's body had been discovered, Emma was no longer investigating a single murder. She was investigating a story that had begun decades earlier. Emma never trusted coincidences. Not because they never happened, they did. But when enough of them gathered around the same victim, they usually stopped being coincidences. By Wednesday morning, the conference room walls had disappeared beneath maps, photographs, timelines, and evidence boards. The center of the room belonged to one photograph: Thomas Walker, the unidentified man. The handwritten words: "The second chance begins." Captain Olivia Brooks stepped inside carrying a folder. "I've spoken with the district commander." Emma looked up. "About?" "The press. They're calling it the locked house murder." Ben sighed. That didn't take long. Captain Brooks placed the folder on the table. "They're asking if we're investigating a serial offender." "We're not." "A cult." "We're not." "A supernatural event." Daniel looked horrified. "They actually asked that?" "They did?" Daniel shook his head. "I leave the office for 10 minutes and people lose their minds." Emma smiled faintly. "The mystery stays inside this room." The captain nodded. "Exactly." After she left, Kevin turned toward Emma. "I found Richard Hale's widow." Emma looked up. "Still local. About 30 minutes outside town." Ben reached for his jacket. "Let's go." The Hale farmhouse sat alone among rolling fields. Age had settled gently over the property. The white paint had faded. The porch creaked. Flower beds surrounded the front steps. An elderly woman opened the door before they knocked. "Eleanor Hale." She nodded. "I'm Detective Emma Hayes." The woman's expression changed the instant she heard the name Walker. "This is about Thomas." Emma didn't answer immediately. "You knew him?" Eleanor smiled sadly. "I knew him almost my whole life." She invited them inside. Family photographs filled every shelf. Richard Hale appeared in nearly all of them. Emma carefully placed the charity photograph on the coffee table. "We were hoping you could identify this man." Eleanor adjusted her glasses. Then, she laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "Oh my." Bennis exchanged a glance with Emma. "What is it?" Eleanor pointed at the photograph. "That isn't Richard." Emma leaned forward. "You're certain?" The elderly woman looked almost offended. "I was married to Richard for 42 years. I think I'd know my own husband." She tapped the smiling man beside Thomas. "That's Richard's younger brother." Emma's pen stopped moving. "He had a brother." Eleanor nodded. "Matthew." Ben frowned. "Our records don't mention him." They wouldn't. "He changed his last name years ago." Emma felt the investigation shift again. "Why?" Eleanor looked toward the window. "Family problems." "What kind?" The old woman hesitated. "The kind people hoped would stay buried." Emma let the silence work. Finally, Eleanor sighed. "Matthew left town almost 30 years ago. Nobody expected him to come back. But he did." "When?" "About 4 years ago." "Did Richard know?" "Yes." "They reconciled?" Ben asked quietly. "And Thomas Walker?" Eleanor smiled. "Thomas helped bring them back together." And Emma looked down at the photograph again. "The second chance begins." Now the words made sense. Not romance. Reconciliation. Family. She asked one more question. "Where is Matthew now?" Eleanor's smile disappeared. "I don't know. I haven't seen him since Richard's funeral." Ben looked confused. "Richard died 14 years ago." "He did. But Matthew came back years later." Emma nodded slowly. "To visit you?" "No. To visit Thomas." That answer lingered in the room. Why Thomas? Back at headquarters, Daniel was standing on a ladder in Thomas's workshop. Ben looked up. "I don't even want to know." Daniel held up a tape measure. The shelving looked uneven. "So I measured it. And I was right." Lisa climbed the ladder beside him. The top shelf was nearly 3 inches shorter than the one beneath it. She tapped the back panel. "Hollow?" Daniel grinned. "See? I told you." Ben shook his head. I hate it when he's right. Daniel looked pleased. It happens more often than people admit. Lisa carefully removed several screws. The thin backing came away. A narrow storage space appeared behind it. Empty, mostly. Emma reached inside with gloved hands. Her fingers brushed against something. A torn piece of paper. She eased it out. Only half remained. The missing edge looked freshly ripped. Ben examined it. A notebook. Emma nodded. Thomas's handwriting covered the page. Most of the sentences were incomplete. Finally found. Can't believe. Matthew was right. Ben. The page ended abruptly. The bottom half was missing. Lisa studied the torn edge. This wasn't accidental. Emma agreed. Someone removed the rest. Daniel looked around the workshop. So our killers searched here too. Emma nodded. They knew exactly what they were looking for. Kevin hurried downstairs carrying a cardboard archive box. I found an old police report. And Emma accepted it. What is it? A burglary. Ben looked surprised. When? 3 weeks before Thomas died. Emma opened the report. Date, time, responding officer. She read silently for a moment. No property reported stolen. Daniel frowned. So, someone broke into the house and stole nothing? And Kevin nodded. That's what Thomas reported. Emma kept reading. The responding officer had noted one unusual detail. The study bookshelf had been pulled away from the wall, then pushed back. Emma slowly lowered the report. No one spoke. 3 weeks earlier, someone had already searched behind the bookshelf. They hadn't found what they wanted. Or it hadn't been there yet. Ben broke the silence. So the murder wasn't spontaneous. Emma nodded. No. They were hunting something. Daniel looked toward the evidence board. And Thomas found it first. Emma stared at the torn notebook page. Thomas had written. Matthew was right. She didn't know what Matthew had been right about, but she knew one thing. Whatever Thomas discovered, he lived for less than 24 hours afterward. Her phone buzzed. It was Officer Collins. Detective. His voice sounded uneasy. We've been inventorying everything recovered from the house. Emma waited. We're missing something. What? The victim owned a fireproof document safe. Emma frowned. I didn't see one. Neither did we. Collins paused. The mounting bolts are still in the basement floor. Emma felt a chill. The safe hadn't been opened. It hadn't been hidden. It had been completely removed. And somehow, no one had noticed it was gone. By Thursday morning, Emma had stopped asking what had been stolen. She was asking what someone believed was worth killing for. The answer had to fit every piece of evidence. The hidden wall compartment, the cedar box, the missing notebook page, the break in 3 weeks earlier. Now, the missing safe. Someone wasn't stealing valuables. Someone was searching for something specific. Emma stood in Thomas Walker's basement, staring at 4 empty anchor bolts embedded in the concrete floor. The outline of the safe was still visible in the dust. Lisa knelt beside it. No scrape marks. Emma looked down. They lifted it. Lisa nodded. At least 2 people. Ben frowned. How heavy? Empty. Lisa shrugged. Maybe 100 pounds. Full? A lot more. Daniel looked around the basement. So either our killer has incredible upper body strength filed, or they brought help. Ben smiled. I was wondering how long you'd last. Daniel looked pleased. 3 whole minutes. Personal record. Emma ignored them. The safe wasn't taken during the murder? Ben looked over. Why not? She pointed at the concrete. Dust. Everyone looked. The rectangular outline beneath the safe was much lighter than the surrounding floor. But the exposed concrete had already begun collecting a thin layer of dust. Lisa understood immediately. It wasn't removed recently. Emma nodded. At least several days. Daniel leaned closer. So when Thomas died, the safe was already gone. That changed everything. If the killer hadn't stolen the safe during the murder, Then who had? Kevin hurried downstairs carrying another folder. I found the purchase, and Emma accepted it. Purchase? The safe. The receipt was almost 12 years old. Fire Shield Model 900, digital keypad, mechanical backup lock. Emma flipped through the warranty registration. Only one name. Thomas Walker. Ben asked the obvious question. Can we track the serial number? Kevin nodded. If it was serviced? Emma smiled. Then let's find out. And 2 hours later, they sat inside the offices of Fire Shield Security. A technician named Harold Briggs searched the company's database. There it is. He turned the monitor toward Emma. 1. Service call. When? 9 days before Mr. Walker died. Emma looked odd. He called for repairs? Harold nodded. The electronic keypad was malfunctioning. Was it fixed? No. Why? Harold frowned. He canceled the appointment. Did he say why? Harold scrolled farther. He told dispatch. He no longer needed the safe. Ben looked at Emma. Thomas had stopped needing the safe just over a week before he was murdered. Outside, Daniel stretched his arms. So, maybe he emptied it. Emma nodded slowly. If he emptied it, where did everything go? Kevin's phone rang. He answered. Then looked toward Emma. I think I know. He turned his laptop around. Thomas rented a storage unit. Ben raised an eyebrow. When? 8 days before his death. Emma felt the pieces beginning to move. The same week, he canceled the safe repair. Kevin nodded. Exactly. The storage facility sat near the interstate on the edge of town. Rows of identical steel doors stretched into the distance. Manager Mark Ellis greeted them at the office. Detectives. Emma showed her badge. We're looking into Unit 117. Mark's expression changed immediately. I figured someone would come. You knew Thomas Walker? Nice man. He only rented the unit for 1 month. Ben asked. What did he store? Mark shook his head. We don't look. Emma expected that answer. We'll need access. Mark unlocked a cabinet. Already arranged. He handed her a key. The unit door rattled upward. Dust drifted through the sunlight. Everyone stopped. It was empty. Completely empty. Daniel looked inside. Well, Ben pointed at him. Don't. Daniel sighed dramatically. I wasn't going to. You were? I absolutely was. Emma slowly walked inside. Nothing. No boxes. No furniture. No documents. Just bare concrete. Lisa crouched near the back wall. Hold on. She brushed away loose dirt. Fresh drag marks. Parallel. About 18 inches apart. Emma knelt beside her. Something heavy. Lisa nodded. It sat here and was removed. Daniel looked toward the doorway. Recently. Mark frowned. That's impossible. Emma stood. Why? Only Mr. Walker had access. Kevin looked up. Not necessarily. The electronic gate keeps records. Mark hurried back toward the office. I can pull them. 5 minutes later, the gate log appeared on the monitor. Emma read silently. Wednesday. Thomas entered. 10:20, 1 in the morning. He left. 10:48. Nothing unusual. Then, Thursday morning. 8:14. Another entry. Ben frowned. Thomas was already dead. Kevin nodded. The gate opened anyway. Mark looked confused. It used his access code. Emma leaned forward. Show me the security footage. The cameras displayed the entrance gate. Thursday. 8:14. A dark pickup truck approached. The driver entered Thomas Walker's code. The gate opened. The truck disappeared toward the storage units. Ben waited. Can we see the driver? Kevin enlarged the image. The windshield reflected the morning sun. No face. Emma watched carefully. What about when he leaves? Kevin fast-forwarded. 8:32. The truck returned. This time something caught Emma's attention. The suspension rode noticeably lower entering, then leaving. Ben saw it too. It was carrying weight. Emma nodded, and whatever it carried. Came out of Unit 117. Daniel crossed his arms. So somebody knew Thomas rented a storage unit. They knew the access code. They knew what they wanted? Emma stared at the screen. The driver had arrived less than 12 hours after Thomas's estimated time of death. Too quickly to be coincidence. This had been planned. Kevin enhanced another frame. The license plate remained unreadable. But something else became visible. A faded company logo on the driver's door. Emma narrowed her eyes. What company is that? Kevin sharpened the image one more time. The logo finally came into focus. Not a company. A church. 3 words curved beneath a small wooden cross. Willow Creek Community Church. Sickers. Emma looked at Ben, the same direction the older man walked after speaking to Thomas. Ben nodded slowly. The old church. Emma stared at the frozen frame. Whatever Thomas Walker had hidden, it wasn't sitting in a locked house anymore. It had left that storage unit in the back of a pickup truck. And for the first time, the investigation had a destination. Emma had stopped believing the investigation was moving in circles. It wasn't. It was moving in spirals. Every answer led back to the same 3 names. Thomas Walker, Matthew Hale, Richard Hale. The only question was why. By 8 o'clock Thursday morning, Emma, Ben, and Daniel pulled into the parking lot of Willow Creek Community Church. The building looked older than the surrounding neighborhood. Red brick, white steeple, weathered wooden doors polished smooth by decades of hands. Daniel looked at the sign. I've got a feeling churches aren't thrilled when detectives show up. Ben glanced at him. They're usually less thrilled when murderers do. Daniel nodded. Fair point. Pastor Samuel Brooks greeted them before they reached the entrance. Detective Hayes? Emma introduced everyone. We're investigating Thomas Walker's death. The pastor's smile faded. I heard. He was a good man. You knew him well? For years. Emma noticed there was no hesitation. Thomas hadn't been an occasional visitor. He belonged here. Inside, sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, painting long bands of color across the wooden pews. The church was quiet, peaceful, almost untouched by time. Emma looked around. Did Thomas volunteer here? The pastor nodded. Every Wednesday. Ben frowned. Every Wednesday. Without fail. Emma immediately checked her notes. Thomas had been murdered on a Wednesday. What did he do? He organized historical records. Daniel raised an eyebrow. A church historian. The pastor smiled. He called himself a caretaker. He believed old records deserved better than dusty boxes. Emma exchanged a quick glance with Ben. Old records, boxes. The words lingered. The pastor led them downstairs to a climate-controlled archive room. Shelves stretched from floor to ceiling. Leather-bound ledgers. Donation books, marriage certificates, property deeds, some nearly 200 years old. Daniel whistled softly. I suddenly understand why people say history repeats itself. Lisa, who had joined them after processing evidence at the house, began photographing the room. Emma slowly walked along the shelves. Nothing looked disturbed. Nothing looked hidden. Pastor Brooks unlocked a cabinet. Thomas spent most of his time here. Inside sat a neatly arranged work table, reading glasses, cotton gloves, a magnifying lamp. Everything exactly as Thomas had left it. Ben picked up a visitor log. Mind if we look? Of course. The final pages were recent. Thomas Walker's signature appeared almost every Wednesday. Then Emma noticed another familiar name, Matthew Hale. Her finger stopped. He was here too. Pastor Brooks nodded. They often worked together. Doing what? Cataloging records. Looking for something. The pastor thought for a moment. I asked Thomas that once. What did he say? Smiled. And? He told me. Some truths simply wait for the right generation to uncover them. Daniel looked toward Emma. That's either incredibly profound or incredibly inconvenient. Emma almost smiled. It's probably both. Kevin called. I've been going through church donation records. Emma put him on speaker. Find anything? Matthew Hale donated every month. Under his own name? No. He used M. Harrison? Ben frowned. Harrison? Emma remembered what Eleanor Hale had said. Matthew had changed his last name. Kevin continued. The donations stopped. He paused. The same week Thomas Walker died. Emma's notebook closed with a quiet snap. Matthew hadn't disappeared years ago. He had disappeared now. Pastor Brooks watched Emma carefully. You think Matthew is involved? Emma answered honestly. I don't know. But I think he knows something. The pastor slowly nodded. I hope this day would never come. He walked toward the oldest section of the archive. Dust covered everything. He removed an enormous family Bible from a shelf. Its leather binding was cracked with age. Thomas asked me to keep this safe. When? About 2 years ago. Emma looked surprised. He left it here? Wes. He said if anything happened to him, the pastor stopped. What? I should give it to someone who asks the right questions. Daniel whispered, no pressure. Pastor Brooks placed the Bible gently on the table. Emma opened the heavy cover. Birth records, marriages, funerals, generations of handwritten names. Nothing unusual. Then, something slipped from between 2 pages. A folded piece of yellowed paper. Everyone froze. Emma carefully unfolded it. It wasn't a letter. It was a hand-drawn map. Ben leaned closer. What are we looking at? The map showed the original Willow Lane neighborhood, long before modern streets. Several properties were outlined in black ink. One location had been circled repeatedly. No address, just a handwritten note. Original boundary, never recorded. Daniel frowned. Never recorded. Emma's eyes scanned the rest of the page. Tiny handwritten initials appeared in one corner. T.W. Thomas Walker. Beneath them, another set, M.H. Matthew Hale. The map had been drawn together. Ben pointed toward the circled property. Whose land was that? Pastor Brooks adjusted his glasses. I don't know. The church records stopped before that survey. Kevin's voice came through Emma's phone. Emma? I think I do. Everyone looked at the phone. I overlaid the map onto the current county survey. Emma waited. Kevin took a slow breath. The circled property doesn't belong to Thomas Walker. It doesn't belong to the church either. Then who owns it? Ben asked. Kevin's answer came quietly. Nobody. Silence settled across the archive room. Kevin continued. It was never legally transferred. It doesn't exist in the county tax system. Emma stared at the map. That's impossible. No, Kevin replied. It's just, missing. Daniel looked around the room. So we've officially graduated. Ben sighed. Graduated to what? Daniel smiled. From murder investigation to missing pieces of history. Emma folded the map carefully. The cedar box. The church archives. Thomas's notebook, the hidden compartment. None of them pointed toward money. Not yet. They pointed toward paper. Old paper. Records. Property. History. Thomas Walker hadn't died protecting something valuable. He had died protecting something that could change what people believed was true. As they prepared to leave, Pastor Brooks called after Emma. Detective. She turned. There was one more thing Thomas said. Emma waited. He told me. The pastor looked toward the old Bible. That if he was right, an entire family had been living under the wrong name for over 50 years. Emma felt the weight of those words settle over the investigation, because she was beginning to understand. This case wasn't just about who killed Thomas Walker. It was about why someone had spent decades making sure the truth stayed buried. Some murders begin with anger. Some begin with greed. Emma Hayes was beginning to suspect this one had begun with a pen. By Friday morning, every known clue pointed toward paper instead of people. Old surveys, church records, property deeds, maps, notebook pages. The deeper they dug, the fewer records they found. That wasn't an accident. Emma stood in the county archives beside Helen Carter once again. I need every property record for Willow Lane. Helen nodded. I've already started. Several thick-deed books sat on a large wooden table, volumes dated back more than a century. Emma opened the first. Transfers, mortgages, boundary adjustments, everything carefully documented. Until, one year, 1971. The pages jumped. Page 343. Directly to page 327. Emma slowly looked up. Where are the others? Helen frowned. They should be there. She checked the spine. No. Her voice grew quieter. They've been removed. Ben picked up another volume. Same thing. Different year. Missing pages. Daniel blinked. Either this courthouse has the world's hungriest termites, or somebody really hates paperwork. Helen wasn't smiling. These books are checked every year. Emma asked quietly. When was the last audit? Helen looked toward the ceiling, thinking. About 6 months ago. And everything was complete. Wes. And Emma closed the book. So someone removed these recently. Kevin entered carrying his laptop. I searched the digitized copies. Emma looked at him hopefully. They're missing too. Ben frowned. Deleted. Kevin nodded. Not corrupted. Deleted. Professionally. Emma's expression hardened. Someone wanted those pages gone. Helen suddenly remembered something. There might be another copy. Everyone looked at her. The county surveyors kept personal field notebooks. We're storage. Daniel smiled. I like storage. It keeps saving our investigation. Half an hour later, they stood inside another basement. Dust covered nearly everything. Metal shelves stretched into darkness. Lisa shined her flashlight across dozens of old boxes. Helen carefully opened one marked Ephialotis 1968-1975. Inside lay weathered leather notebooks. Emma opened the first. Hand-drawn measurements. Fence lines. Creeks. Roads. Nothing unusual. Then Ben found one with a ribbon marking a page. Emma. She joined him. Across 2 pages spread a detailed survey of Willow Lane. Unlike the official county map, this one showed an additional parcel. A narrow strip of land running between 2 larger properties. No owner listed. Only one handwritten sentence. Ownership under review. Emma whispered. This is it. Kevin photographed every page. Daniel looked over his shoulder. So somebody erased an entire property. Ben corrected him. They tried. Emma studied the notebook. One name appeared repeatedly. County Surveyor Arthur Whitmore. Ben looked surprised. Judge Whitmore. Emma nodded slowly. Before he became a judge, he was the county surveyor. Daniel folded his arms. Interesting career change. Emma didn't answer. She was already thinking. Arthur Whitmore. One of the most respected retired judges in the state. Known for his absolute integrity. And now, his handwriting sat beside the missing property. Captain Brooks called. I've got something. Emma answered. What is it? The courthouse security office. They found old backup tapes. Emma's pulse quickened. How old? About 8 months. Before the last archive audit. Emma looked at Ben. We're coming. The grainy security footage wasn't impressive. Black and white. No audio. Just empty hallways. Kevin advanced the recording. 11:40, 7 at night. A single figure entered the archive room. Ben leaned closer. Can you sharpen it? Kevin tried. Only slightly better. The person wore gloves, a baseball cap, a maintenance jacket. Face hidden. Daniel frowned. Convenient. The figure remained inside for almost 20 minutes, then emerged carrying something under one arm. A large binder. Helen pointed immediately. That's one of the deed volumes. Kevin fast-forwarded. The person never returned it. Watched the footage again, then again. Something bothered her. Pause. Kevin froze the frame. Emma pointed toward the left side of the screen. The door. Ben squinted. What about it? It opened before the keycard was used. Silence. Kevin replayed it frame by frame. Emma was right. The archive door had already been unlocked. The intruder hadn't broken in. Someone had left it open. An insider. Captain Brooks crossed her arms. So we have help from inside the courthouse. Emma nodded. Or someone who had authorized access. Helen looked devastated. You think one of my staff? Emma answered carefully. I think someone wanted those records gone. Not necessarily you. Kevin searched employee access logs. There were only 6 people with keys. Ben began writing names. Archivists. Maintenance supervisor, county clerk, records manager, historical preservation director, retired consultant. Emma stopped him. Retired consultant. Kevin nodded. He still has after-hours authorization. Name? Kevin turned the screen. Arthur Whitmore. No one spoke. The room suddenly felt much smaller. Daniel finally broke the silence. The retired judge. The surveyor. The consultant. Ben looked toward Emma. That's one person wearing a lot of hats. And Emma stared at the access records. It doesn't prove anything. No. But it gives us a reason to talk to him. Late that afternoon, Emma and Ben drove toward Judge Whitmore's home. An old Victorian house overlooking Blackridge Lake. Perfectly maintained. Perfectly quiet. A gardener worked near the front gate. Emma approached. We're looking for Judge Whitmore. The gardener looked uncomfortable. He's not home. When will he return? I don't know. Ben noticed something behind the house. A large burn barrel. Still warm. Smoke drifted lazily into the afternoon air. Emma walked toward it. Inside ashes. Half-burned paper. Blackened leather binding. Lisa carefully sifted through the remains with gloved hands. Most of it had been destroyed. Almost. One fragment survived. Only 3 words remained legible. Original land grant. Emma held the scorched fragment in silence. Someone hadn't just been hiding records. Someone was still destroying them, which meant the truth Thomas Walker had uncovered was dangerous enough that even after his death, someone was still trying to erase it. As Emma placed the burned fragment into an evidence bag, her phone rang. Kevin sounded unusually tense. Emma, what now? I just finished enhancing the storage facility footage. Did you get the license plate? Nope. No. I got something better. Emma stopped walking. What? The driver wasn't alone. Ben looked at her. Emma put the phone on speaker. Kevin continued. When the truck leaves the storage unit, there's someone sitting in the passenger seat. Emma's heartbeat quickened. Can you identify them? Kevin was silent for a moment. Then he said, I can't identify the face. But I can identify the cane. Emma closed her eyes. There was only one person connected to the investigation who was known to walk with a handcrafted walnut cane. Judge Arthur Whitmore. Every investigation reaches a point where assumptions become dangerous. Emma Hayes believed they had arrived there. Everything seemed to point toward Judge Arthur Whitmore. The missing records. The courthouse access. The burned papers. The cane. It almost fit too perfectly. And that was exactly what bothered her. If you've been enjoying Midnight Casefiles and don't want to miss the next investigation, consider subscribing and turning on notifications. Every case is built one clue at a time, and we're only halfway through this one. Friday evening found Emma, Ben, and Daniel back at headquarters. Captain Brooks looked around the conference room. Before anyone decides the retired judge is our killer, I want evidence. Not theories. Emma nodded. I agree. Daniel leaned back. I was starting to miss being told not to arrest people. Ben smirked. It's one of your better qualities. Kevin entered carrying another folder. I've got Judge Whitmore's personnel history. Emma looked up. Anything unusual? No disciplinary actions. No complaints. No ethics investigations. Daniel shrugged. That's disappointingly respectable. And Emma took the file. Arthur Whitmore had spent 43 years in public service. County surveyor. Assistant prosecutor. Judge. Retired consultant. His reputation was nearly spotless. Ben looked toward Emma. So either he's exactly who everyone thinks he is, or he's the greatest actor in county history. And Emma closed the file. Let's find out. And an hour later, they were sitting across from Arthur Whitmore. The retired judge looked every bit his 81 years. Neatly dressed, perfect posture. The polished walnut cane rested against his chair. His expression remained calm. "I've been expecting you." Emma wasn't surprised. "Because of Thomas Walker." Whitmore nodded. "Because eventually someone would ask the right questions." Ben placed the burned document fragment on the table. "Did you destroy this?" Whitmore looked at it for several seconds. "No." "You recognize it?" "Yes." "What is it?" "The beginning of a mistake." Daniel quietly whispered. "That's not confusing at all." Whitmore actually smiled. "I imagine it isn't." Emma leaned forward. "Judge, did you know Thomas Walker was investigating an old property dispute?" "I did." "Did you help him?" "Sometimes." "Did you hide records?" Whitmore's answer came immediately. "No." "Did you remove records?" A longer pause. "Yes." Silence settled over the room. Ben looked up. "You admit it." "I do." Emma kept her voice steady. "Why?" Whitmore folded his hands. "To protect innocent people." Daniel blinked. "I was not expecting that answer." Neither was Emma, Whitmore continued. "Those records should never have disappeared. But once they did. Putting them back without proof would have destroyed families." Emma studied his face. He didn't look frightened. He looked tired. "As county surveyor, I inherited a problem that began before I was hired." "What problem?" "A land survey that was intentionally falsified." Ben frowned. "By who?" "I don't know. The people responsible were already dead." Emma asked. "So you covered it up?" Whitmore slowly shook his head. "No. I postponed it." "There's a difference." Daniel quietly muttered. "I suspect lawyers say that a lot." Whitmore almost laughed. "You'd be surprised." Kevin interrupted through the conference room speaker. "Mama, I found something." "What is it?" "The original land grant has a reference number." Emma grabbed a pen. "Go ahead." Kevin read it aloud. "Grant file 18472. Sarah Mitchell, the assistant district attorney, looked up from her laptop. "I've seen that number." Everyone turned. "Where?" "In probate." She typed rapidly. A few moments later, a sealed court file appeared. Estate proceedings, 1972. Status, never closed. Ben frowned. "How can an estate stay open for 54 years? Sarah looked puzzled. "It shouldn't. Unless." She stopped typing. Emma waited. "Unless the court never identified the lawful heirs." The room became silent. Daniel broke it first. "So somebody died, and nobody officially inherited the property?" Sarah nodded. "That's exactly what happened." Emma felt the investigation shift once again. The missing land, the erased records, the hidden map, none of it had been about ownership. It had been about inheritance. But not Thomas Walker's inheritance. Someone else's. Whitmore watched Emma carefully. "I believe Thomas finally solved it." Emma met his eyes. "Solved what?" "The identity of the heirs." Ben leaned forward. "And you know who they are?" Whitmore slowly shook his head. "No." "But Thomas did." Emma thought about David's words. "I finally opened the box. Everything changes." The cedar box hadn't contained money. It had contained proof. Proof that someone alive today legally owned land that had been hidden for more than half a century. Sarah Mitchell continued reviewing the probate file. There are references to handwritten family records. And Emma immediately looked up. "The records from the cedar box?" "Possibly." Sarah nodded. "They were listed as supporting documentation?" "But they were never filed with the court." Ben frowned. "So they disappeared." Emma corrected him. "No. They were taken." Whitmore quietly added, "Thomas believed someone had found them before the court could." Emma looked at the retired judge. You knew he was in danger. Whitmore lowered his eyes. I feared he was. Why didn't you tell us? I didn't know who to trust. Emma noticed genuine regret in his voice. For the first time, she no longer believed Arthur Whitmore was protecting himself. She believed he had spent years protecting a truth. Kevin suddenly spoke again through the speaker. Emma, I've just received the fingerprint comparison from the hidden compartment. Emma stood. The unidentified print. Wes, we finally have a match. Everyone waited. Kevin took a slow breath. It doesn't belong to Judge Whitmore. It doesn't belong to Matthew Hale. It doesn't belong to anyone in the Walker family. Ben frowned. Then whose is it? Kevin answered quietly. It belongs to the man who installed Thomas Walker's security system 11 years ago. Emma froze. The security system. The very system that made the murder seem impossible. If the installer had access to the house, then perhaps the locked room mystery hadn't begun on the night Thomas Walker died. Perhaps it had begun more than a decade earlier. Emma Hayes had stopped asking who benefited. Now she wanted to know who prepared. Because murders committed in panic left mistakes. Murders planned over years left architecture. Every detail had a purpose. The locked doors, the alarm, the hidden compartment, the staged crime scene. None of it felt improvised anymore. Friday afternoon found the investigation focused on a single name. Alan Pierce, security technician, installer, fingerprint match. Ben looked over Alan's personnel file. Retired 6 years ago. Kevin nodded. Worked for Secure Home Systems for almost 20 years. No criminal record. No complaints. Daniel shrugged. So either he's incredibly boring or incredibly careful. Emma looked up. Where is he now? Kevin answered. About 40 miles south. He repairs antique clocks. Daniel blinked. That's oddly specific. Ben smiled. Fitting. A man who used to install security systems now fixes things that never stop ticking. Daniel pointed at him. That was unexpectedly poetic. Ben looked mildly uncomfortable. Don't tell anyone. Captain Brooks stepped into the room. You've got 2 hours. Emma looked up. For what? Before every news van in the county starts asking questions. Emma nodded. That's plenty. Daniel quietly muttered. History suggests otherwise. 2 hours later, they arrived at Pierce Clock Restoration. The workshop smelled of brass polish and machine oil. Dozens of antique clocks ticked in perfect rhythm. Alan Pierce looked up from a workbench. He appeared surprised, but not frightened. I've been wondering when you'd arrive. Emma showed her badge. You know why we're here? I imagine it's Thomas Walker. Emma studied him carefully. People expecting detectives often rehearse their answers. Alan didn't look rehearsed. He looked resigned. Ben placed the fingerprint report on the table. Your print was inside Thomas Walker's hidden wall compartment. Alan didn't deny it. It would be. Silence. Emma waited. He continued. I installed the alarm system. I also reinforced the study wall. Daniel frowned. The hidden compartment. Alan nodded. Thomas asked me to build it. Emma looked surprised. You knew about it? I built it. Ben leaned forward. What was inside? I never asked. And Emma believed him. People who built safes rarely knew what went inside them. What about the alarm? Alan slowly walked toward an old filing cabinet. He removed a rolled blueprint. I kept copies. He spread the plans across a workbench. Lisa immediately leaned over them. The study, Alan pointed. The original design included a maintenance override. Emma looked closer. A what? A hidden service switch. If the alarm control panel ever failed, technicians could disable it. Kevin frowned. Without using the keypad. Alan nodded. Exactly. Emma's heartbeat quickened. Where is it? Alan tapped the blueprint. Behind the library molding. Lisa looked up. Why never checked there? Daniel quietly whistled. So somebody with knowledge of the installation could bypass the system. Alan corrected him, only temporarily. The alarm log would still record activity. Kevin nodded. And ours never did. Emma folded her arms. So nobody used it. Alan looked directly at her. Not recently. That answer lingered. Not recently. Meaning, someone had used it before. Back at the Walker house, Lisa carefully removed a section of decorative molding. Behind it, exactly where the blueprint showed, a tiny metal switch. Dust covered everything. Emma examined it closely. No fingerprints. Lisa nodded. It hasn't been touched in years. Kevin tested the circuit. It still works. And Emma stared at the hidden mechanism. The impossible locked room mystery had just become more complicated. The house had possessed a secret method of disabling the alarm, but it hadn't been used during the murder. Another theory eliminated. Another question born. Sarah Mitchell entered carrying a thick probate folder. I've got something. Emma turned. The hairs. Sarah nodded. Judge Whitmore quietly joined them. No one objected anymore. He had earned a cautious measure of trust. Sarah opened the file. The original land belonged to Jacob Harrison. Emma looked toward Whitmore. The Harrison name? He nodded. Matthew changed his surname for a reason. Sarah continued. When Jacob Harrison died, the property should have passed equally to both branches of his family. Ben frowned, but it didn't. No. The survey erased one branch. Emma felt the pieces aligning. For 54 years, an entire family legally ceased to exist. Sarah nodded. On paper. Judge Whitmore quietly added, but not in reality. Emma looked down at the map. Thomas hadn't discovered treasure. He had discovered injustice. Generations of it. Daniel scratched his chin. So all those missing records were hiding people. Emma nodded. Exactly. Kevin suddenly entered at a near run. I found something else. Emma looked up. What now? Thomas visited the post office. Ben checked the timeline. Wednesday morning. Kevin nodded. Just after leaving the storage unit. Emma's pulse quickened. Did he mail a letter? Kevin smiled slightly. Not a letter. He placed a printed receipt on the table. Certified mail. Priority Whodunit. One package. Signature required. Mailed at 11:16 a.m., the day Thomas Walker died. Emma stared at the receipt. No return address. Ben asked, destination. Kevin turned another page. The recipient information had been partially redacted under postal privacy rules, but one line remained visible. F. Blackridge County Probate Court. Sarah looked up instantly. I never received anything. Emma looked toward her. Are you sure? Sarah nodded. I would have remembered. Daniel slowly spoke. So Thomas mailed proof to the court. And it never arrived. No one said anything. Because everyone was thinking the same thing. Someone hadn't just murdered Thomas Walker. Someone had intercepted his final attempt to tell the truth. Kevin wasn't finished. The package required a signature. Emma looked at him. So someone signed for it. Kevin nodded. I requested the delivery record. When will we get it? Kevin looked at the confirmation email. A few hours. Emma walked to the evidence board. Every clue now pointed in one direction. Thomas had hidden documents, moved them to storage, mailed copies to the court, then died. The conspiracy hadn't begun with the murder. The murder had begun because the conspiracy was collapsing. Her phone vibrated. Kevin looked down at his laptop. His expression changed. The postal service responded faster than expected. Emma turned. You have the signature. Kevin slowly nodded. I do. The room became silent. Emma stepped closer. Who signed for the package? Kevin swallowed. It wasn't a courthouse employee. It wasn't the clerk. It wasn't Sarah. Ben frowned. Then who? Kevin enlarged the scanned delivery receipt. Across the signature line written in neat blue ink were two familiar words. Host Arthur Whitmore. The room fell completely silent. Just 1 hour earlier, Emma had started believing the retired judge was protecting the truth. Now, the last known package Thomas Walker ever mailed had been signed for by the very same man. Emma Hayes had learned that timing often revealed more than fingerprints. A lie told immediately usually hid panic. A lie told decades later usually hid regret. She looked across the conference room at the enlarged delivery receipt. Arthur Whitmore, signed in blue ink. There was no mistake. Ben finally spoke. So now what? Emma answered quietly. We asked him why. No one objected, not even Daniel. An hour later, they were back at Whitmore's house. The retired judge opened the door before Emma knocked. He looked at their faces. You received the postal record. Emma held up the receipt. You signed for Thomas Walker's package. I did. You never told us. No. Ben folded his arms. Why? Whitmore stepped aside. Because I wanted to explain it properly. They followed him into a small study. Unlike Thomas Walker's house, this room was filled with photographs instead of books. Children, graduations, wedding pictures, and ordinary life. Whitmore carefully sat down. The package wasn't addressed to me. Emma remained standing. Then why did you sign for it? The courthouse mailroom called. They knew I was handling the old probate matter. Sarah Mitchell frowned. That isn't standard procedure. Whitmore nodded. It wasn't. But Thomas marked the package. He reached into a drawer. For my personal attention. Emma stared at the envelope. Across the front, beneath the official address, Thomas had written in black ink. Speckrest only Judge Arthur Whitmore may open this package. Ben looked surprised. So Thomas trusted you. Whitmore nodded slowly. He did. Emma asked the question that mattered. What was inside? Whitmore quietly opened a locked desk drawer. He removed a thick brown envelope. I never destroyed it. I hid it. Emma accepted the envelope. Inside were carefully organized documents. Handwritten family records, birth certificates, letters, an original 19th century survey. Sophia Patel, who had joined the team from the crime lab, immediately began examining the papers. These are authentic. She looked up. Every one of them. Sarah flipped through the birth records. My God. Emma watched her. What? Sarah looked almost stunned. The Harrison family wasn't erased by accident. Ben frowned. What do you mean? Sarah placed two documents side by side. The county records created an entirely different legal family. Emma immediately understood. The heirs listed today aren't the legal heirs. Sarah nodded. They never were. Daniel slowly rubbed the back of his neck. So for 54 years, the wrong people inherited everything. Whitmore looked down, and every judge before me believed those records were genuine. Emma looked toward him. You knew. I suspected, but suspicion isn't evidence. He gestured toward the envelope. This was. Quietly ask, why didn't you file it? Whitmore closed his eyes. Because Thomas called me. Emma leaned forward. When? The morning he died. What did he say? Whitmore remembered every word. He told me, don't file anything yet. Someone's watching. The room fell silent. He wanted time to make copies. Whitmore nodded. He believed the originals would disappear. Emma whispered. He was right. Kevin entered carrying another report. I've been reconstructing Thomas's movements again. Emma looked up. Find something. I synchronized every available camera. The market, the pharmacy, the storage facility, the church, the neighborhood. Ben asked, and Kevin enlarged a frame taken from a traffic camera. Thomas wasn't alone. Emma stepped closer. A dark sedan followed Thomas's truck, not closely enough to attract attention, just consistently. Kevin advanced the timeline. The sedan appeared again, outside the pharmacy, again near the church, again entering Willow Lane. Daniel frowned. Someone tailed him all day. Kevin nodded. Professionally. Emma studied the vehicle. No readable plate. No driver. But always the same distance, Ben quietly said. They were waiting. Lisa entered carrying a sealed evidence bag. I've got something from the study. Emma turned. I reprocessed the floor. Beneath the rug. Emma looked surprised. The rug. Lisa nodded. We lifted it completely this time. Inside the bag rested a transparent casting. A dusty shoe impression. Daniel looked confused. We've already got Thomas's prints. Lisa shook her head. This isn't from after the murder. Emma looked closer. What makes you say that? The furniture? Lisa pointed to the impression. The bookshelf was still in its original position when this print was made. Ben frowned. So, the footprint came first? Lisa nodded. Long before we moved anything. Sophia measured the sole pattern. Size 11. Heavy work boot. Emma immediately asked, Thomas's size? 9. Ben looked at the cast. So someone else threw that room. Lisa nodded. And here's the strange part. She produced another photograph. The footprint began near the hallway, continued into the study, then stopped. There were no return prints. Daniel blinked. That's impossible. Emma didn't answer. She spread the photographs across the table. One set of prints. Into the room. None out. Ben stared for several seconds. The rug covered the exit? Lisa shook her head. No. Emma slowly looked toward the floor plan. The hidden compartment. The chair. The bookshelf. Then something caught her attention. She walked to the blueprint Alan Pierce had provided. Her fingers stopped on a narrow wall cavity running behind the fireplace. She looked at Daniel. When you scanned the room, did you map the wall thickness? Daniel's expression changed. No. Emma looked at Ben. We assumed the walls were solid. Ben immediately understood. We never proved they were. Daniel grabbed his tablet. Give me 10 minutes. 20 minutes later, the portable wall scanner moved slowly across the study. Everyone watched the display. Solid brick, solid brick, solid brick. Then, a hollow section appeared, only 18 inches wide, running from the study toward the old chimney. Lisa looked at Emma. That's not a chimney cavity. Emma nodded. No, it isn't. Daniel stared at the scan. His usual humor disappeared. Emma, there's enough space in there for someone to hide. Silence settled over the room. Every detective instinct Emma possessed suddenly aligned. The footprint, the staged crime scene, the repositioned body, the untouched alarm, the locked doors. She wasn't looking at an escape route. She was looking at a hiding place. Someone hadn't entered after Thomas Walker came home. Someone had already been inside the house. Waiting. Emma Hayes had seen enough crime scenes to know one thing: impossible murders almost never required impossible explanations. They required ordinary explanations, hidden beneath extraordinary assumptions. The hollow space behind the fireplace had changed everything. Not because it proved how the killer escaped. It proved they might never have needed to escape at all. Saturday morning began with the study sealed once again. This time, not as a crime scene, as an experiment. Lisa carefully moved the wall scanner across the brickwork one more time. The display confirmed the same narrow cavity, 18 inches wide, nearly 7 feet tall. Daniel stared at the screen. I still don't like this. Ben looked at him. Because it's creepy. No. Because, if Emma's right, we've spent almost a week looking in the wrong direction. Emma nodded. We assumed the mystery started after Thomas came home. She looked toward the front door. I think it started before. Kevin projected the original architectural drawings onto a large monitor. The house had been built in 1949. Every wall, every beam, every utility line. Nothing suggested a hidden passage. Sophia compared the plans with the laser scan. They match. Ben frowned. So there's nowhere to go? Emma agreed. No tunnel. No hidden hallway. No escape route. Daniel folded his arms. So if someone hid in there, they'd still need to leave. Emma looked at him. Exactly? And that's the question we've been asking backwards. Everyone looked at her. The locked doors. The alarm. The untouched windows. We've treated them as evidence of how the killer escaped. She paused. What if they're evidence that the killer escaped normally? Silence. Ben slowly nodded, meaning the house wasn't locked yet. Okay, Emma smiled faintly. Now we're asking the right question. Kevin replayed the security log. Thomas arrived home. 9:41 p.m., alarm armed. 9:53 p.m., nothing afterward. Emma walked to the whiteboard. Let's reconstruct it. She wrote down 9:41. Thomas arrives home. 9:43. Goes into the study. 9:45. Opens cedar box. 947. Killer confronts him. 949. Thomas is killed. 951. Crime scene staged. 3. Alarm armed. Ben stared at the timeline. The killer only had 12 minutes. Emma nodded. More than enough. Daniel pointed at the last entry. Who armed the alarm? No idea. Emma looked toward Kevin. Can the system tell us? Kevin shook his head. It records the code, not who entered it. Lisa added quietly. The killer knew the code. They could arm it before leaving. Ben frowned. But how would they know the code? No one answered. Instead, everyone looked toward the recovered documents. Thomas trusted very few people. Whoever killed him had known the house, known the study, known the compartment. Maybe, they had known the alarm code too. Emma wasn't ready to make that leap. Not yet. Daniel suddenly crouched beside the fireplace. Something's odd. Ben walked over. What now? Daniel tapped the brick hearth. Hear that? He knocked twice. Solid. Then again. Near the corner. A dull echo answered. Lisa knelt beside him. There shouldn't be any empty space there. Emma joined them. Can we remove it? Lisa nodded. Carefully. 30 minutes later, one loose brick came free. Then another. Dust poured into the room. Daniel shined a flashlight inside. I've got metal. Sophia carefully reached into the cavity with long evidence tongs. Something scraped against the brick. Slowly, a long object emerged. Everyone froze. A kitchen knife. 8-inch blade. Dark stains still visible despite days of drying. Ben whispered, "Don't touch it." Sophia already had it secured inside an evidence tray. Emma stared silently. The murder weapon. It had never left the house. Daniel looked toward the chimney. So the killer hid it. Inside the wall. Evelyn Shaw examined the blade under portable lighting. The dimensions fit the wound. Lisa looked at the handle. No fingerprints. Emma expected that. Wiped clean. Sophia frowned. Not completely. She angled the handle beneath a forensic light. Tiny fibers clung beneath the metal guard. Blue. Synthetic. Kevin photographed them. Daniel looked puzzled. That's not from the house. Lisa nodded. No. It looks like workwear fabric. Emma made another note. Blue workwear, heavy work boots. Professional surveillance. Prepared staging. This wasn't random. Ben noticed something engraved near the base of the blade. Hold on. Sophia rotated it. A tiny manufacturer's logo. Not a kitchen brand. Emma recognized it immediately. Fire Shield. Everyone looked at her. The same company that made Thomas's safe. Daniel blinked. They made knives. Kevin checked the database. They didn't. They gave commemorative utility knives to employees. Emma slowly turned toward him. Employees. Kevin nodded. Installation technicians. Silence. Alan Pierce, the security installer. Emma felt her heartbeat quicken. Not because she believed Alan was guilty. Because someone wanted them to. The knife was almost too convenient. The company logo. The hidden wall. The fingerprint. Everything pointed neatly toward one man. Too neatly. Ben saw the same thing. This feels planted. Emma nodded. It does. Captain Brooks entered moments later. I've got your warrant. Emma looked up. For Alan Pierce. The captain shook her head. No, boo. She handed over the paperwork. For fire shield security. Emma frowned. Why? Captain Brooks met her eyes. The company closed 9 years ago. Kevin looked surprised. I know. She paused. But before it closed, someone erased almost every employee record. Daniel slowly smiled. No, that's suspicious. Emma picked up the knife again, studying it through the evidence bag. The logo wasn't a clue. It was a message. Someone wanted the investigation looking backward. Toward Alan Pierce. Toward Fire Shield. Toward the alarm system. Away from something else. Her phone buzzed. Kevin had just finished another enhancement. He sounded almost breathless. Emma, what happened? I enhanced the neighborhood traffic camera again. Find the sedan? Yes. And it wasn't following Thomas? Emma frowned. What do you mean? Kevin enlarged 2 separate timestamps. The sedan entered Willow Lane 1:43 minutes before Thomas came home. Emma's eyes widened. So the driver, Kevin finished the sentence, was already waiting. The killer hadn't followed Thomas home. The killer had reached the house first, and unless there was another way inside. Emma now knew exactly where they had been waiting. Inside Thomas Walker's study. Hidden behind the fireplace. Listening. Watching. Waiting for Thomas Walker to walk through his own front door. Emma Hayes had stopped chasing the impossible. Now she was chasing preparation. Someone had known exactly when Thomas Walker would return home. Someone had entered before him. Someone had waited in silence. That wasn't luck. That was planning. Saturday afternoon began inside Fire Shield Security's abandoned headquarters. Dust covered everything. Rows of empty cubicles stretched through the building. File cabinets stood open. Computer towers had long since disappeared. Daniel looked around. This place feels like someone left halfway through lunch. Ben picked up an old employee handbook. Or halfway through a panic. Kevin had spent the morning recovering files from an archived backup server. There wasn't much left. Emma looked over his shoulder. What survived? Payroll. Vehicle assignments. Training certifications. He clicked another folder. And internal maintenance schedules. Lisa opened a cabinet labeled Field Teachments. Inside, one folder remained. Only one. Alan Pierce? Emma frowned. Just his? Kevin nodded. Every other personnel file was destroyed. Daniel looked toward Emma. So someone erased the company, but accidentally forgot one employee. Emma shook her head. No. They wanted us to find Alan. Ben slowly nodded. A convenient suspect. Kevin opened Alan's work history. Every installation, every maintenance visit, every repair call. Everything ended 6 years earlier. Emma stopped at one entry. Thomas Walker. Original installation. Routine maintenance. Battery replacement. No additional visits. She looked at Kevin. Any unexplained access afterward. Kevin shook his head. Nothing. Sophia Paddle entered carrying another evidence report. I finished the fibers from the knife. Emma looked up. They weren't Alan's. Nopo. What were they? Industrial maintenance coveralls, blue polyester, commercial grade, used by dozens of service companies, not unique. Daniel sighed dramatically. So much for our miracle clue. Emma smiled faintly. Real investigations rarely get miracle clues. Ben looked at Alan's timeline. Where was he Wednesday night? Kevin answered immediately. We verified it. Traffic cameras, restaurant receipts, credit card transactions, hospital parking records. Alan Pierce had spent the evening sitting beside his wife during chemotherapy. He never came within 30 miles of Willow Lane. Ben closed the file. So he's out. Emma nodded. He built the compartment. He installed the alarm. But he didn't kill Thomas. Daniel looked relieved. I liked him. And Emma raised an eyebrow. You met him once? Still, he repairs clocks. That's hard to dislike. Back at headquarters, Kevin projected a map of Willow Lane. Colored lines appeared across the screen. "What are we looking at?" Emma asked. "I rebuilt the neighborhood." He zoomed in. Every security camera, every traffic camera, every witness statement, every delivery record. One by one, vehicles appeared. Mail truck, utility van, garbage collection, landscape crew. Ben noticed something unusual. "Who's that?" Kevin enlarged a white cargo van. No company logo. No registration visible. Emma studied the timeline. It parked 2 streets away. When? Kevin highlighted several dates. Monday, Wednesday, Friday again on Tuesday, again the following Thursday, always during the same afternoon window. Daniel frowned. "It keeps coming back." Ben looked toward Emma. "Watching?" Emma nodded. "I think so." Kevin overlaid another layer: Thomas Walker's routine: morning walk, market, church, workshop, home. The van appeared every Wednesday, always before Thomas returned home. Someone had been studying him, not for days, for weeks. Lisa quietly said, "This wasn't a crime of opportunity." Emma answered softly, "No. It was a schedule." Captain Brooks entered carrying a cardboard evidence box. "We found something from the original neighborhood canvas." Emma looked surprised. "I thought we'd processed everything." "So did I." She opened the box. Inside sat ordinary household items collected during the first search. Receipts, advertising flyers, junk mail, an empty coffee mug. Daniel blinked. "We kept his coffee mug." Captain Brooks shrugged. "It was sitting on the kitchen counter." Lisa picked it up. "Nobody tested this." Emma frowned. "Why not?" "It wasn't near the crime scene." Sophia carefully dusted the handle. Seconds later, a clear fingerprint emerged. Not Thomas's, not Sarah's, not David's. Kevin immediately ran it through AFS. Everyone waited. No match. Daniel sighed. "Our mystery person again." Emma looked closer at the mug. A faded logo. Willow Bean Cafe. Ben frowned. Thomas didn't drink coffee. Sarah Walker had mentioned that during her first interview. Thomas preferred tea. Emma turned to Kevin. "Check his purchases." Kevin searched Thomas's bank statements. Nothing. No coffee, no cafe visits. Ben looked at the mug. "So whose was it?" Emma looked around the kitchen. The mug had been washed, placed neatly beside the sink. Not abandoned, not forgotten. Returned. Whoever drank from it had been comfortable enough to clean up afterward. Daniel slowly looked toward Emma. "You don't think?" Emma finished the thought. They weren't hiding yet. Silence settled over the room. The killer hadn't entered through a window. They hadn't broken in. They had walked through the front door. Hours before the murder. Ben frowned. "But Thomas wasn't home." Emma nodded. "Exactly." Kevin suddenly looked up from another report. "I found a grocery delivery." Emma turned. "What kind?" "Wednesday afternoon." Thomas had ordered groceries online. Delivery time 4:18 p.m. Ben frowned. He wasn't home. Kevin shook his head. The driver reported the customer answered the door. The room fell silent. Emma slowly stood. "What?" Kevin enlarged the delivery receipt. Signed electronically. Customer received order. No complaints. No failed delivery. Daniel whispered. "So somebody accepted the groceries." Ben looked toward Emma. Thomas was still at the church. Emma nodded slowly. The killer. Everyone stared at the receipt. The driver had unknowingly handed groceries to the person who would later murder Thomas Walker. Kevin called up the driver's body camera. A pilot program required deliveries to record the front porch. The footage was brief, only 20 seconds. A man opened the front door. Baseball cap, blue maintenance coveralls. Face mostly hidden by the angle. He smiled. Accepted 2 grocery bags. Thanked the driver politely. Closed the door. Emma watched it twice, then a third time. The voice. Calm, confident, comfortable. Not the voice of someone breaking into a house. The voice of someone who expected to be there. Daniel broke the silence. "He sounds." Ben finished it. "Like someone who knew Thomas." Emma nodded. "No." She replayed the final 3 seconds. The man closed the door. Before it latched, his left hand reached instinctively toward the hallway. Not searching. Not guessing. He knew exactly where the light switch was. Emma looked at Ben. Our killer had been inside this house before. Her phone vibrated. Kevin looked down at another incoming result. His expression changed immediately. The fingerprint from the coffee mug. Emma held her breath. I got a hit. Ben stepped closer. Who is it? Kevin stared at the screen, then looked slowly back at Emma. It belongs to a county building inspector, a man who had officially inspected Thomas Walker's house 9 years earlier, and according to county employment records, he had resigned. The very same week Fire Shield Security suddenly went out of business. Emma Hayes' new investigations rarely unraveled all at once. They loosened one thread, then another, until the entire knot finally came apart. Saturday evening settled over Blackridge as Kevin projected Michael Donovan's personnel file onto the conference room screen. County building inspector. Employed for 22 years. Resigned without notice 9 years ago. The same week Fire Shield Security permanently closed. Ben leaned back. That timing isn't a coincidence. Emma nodded. No, it never was. Daniel sipped what was now his 4th cup of coffee. I'd like to officially apologize to Alan Pierce. Ben looked over. You never accused him. I judged him internally. Emma almost smiled. Very mature of you. I know. It's personal growth. Kevin clicked open Donovan's employment records. No criminal history. No lawsuits. No disciplinary action. Captain Brooks folded her arms. Too clean. Emma agreed. Let's see what he inspected. Kevin searched the archive, schools, office buildings, apartment complexes. Then, Thomas Walker's house. Inspection completed. Approved. 9 years earlier. Lisa frowned. What was renovated? Kevin opened the permit application. Study fireplace restoration. Silence. Emma slowly looked up. The fireplace. Daniel set down his coffee. The hiding place? Kevin nodded. The renovation created the wall cavity. Ben frowned. But Alan Pierce said Thomas asked for it. He did. Emma replied. But Donovan approved the construction. Lisa leaned toward the monitor, so both men knew that space existed. Emma nodded. But only one built it. Kevin clicked another attachment. Inspection photographs. Dozens of them. Exterior, roof, foundation, study. Emma stopped him. Go back. Kevin enlarged one photograph. The study. Taken before the renovation, there was no hollow wall, no concealed space, just solid brick. The next photograph. Taken 3 days later. The fireplace had been dismantled, framing exposed. Emma stared quietly. Show me the last image. The final inspection photo displayed the finished room. Beautifully restored. Everything appeared ordinary. Except. Daniel leaned closer. Hold on. He pointed toward a corner of the photograph. A man stood partially reflected in the study window. Not Donovan. Not Alan Pierce. Someone else. Only a shoulder. A blue maintenance jacket. Ben looked toward Kevin. Can you enhance it? Kevin tried. The image sharpened slightly. A company logo appeared. Not Fire Shield. Another contractor. Blackridge Restoration Services. Emma made a note. Find everyone employed there. Kevin nodded. Already started. Alan Pierce arrived at headquarters 30 minutes later. Emma placed the renovation photographs on the table. Do you recognize him? Alan studied the reflection. Nope. But I recognize the company. Emma waited. They hired temporary labor. Different crews every week. Did anyone help you build the compartment? Alan thought carefully. Yes. I couldn't lift the masonry alone. Ben leaned forward. Who? I don't remember his name. What do you remember? Alan closed his eyes. He never spoke much. Tall. Strong. Walked with a slight limp. Emma exchanged a glance with Ben. Kevin searched employee records. A minute later, I found one. Former laborer. Nathan Cole, 6'4", construction injury, permanent limp, employment ended 9 years ago. Current address, unknown, Daniel sighed. Of course it is. Emma wasn't discouraged. Run financials. Cole? Family? Vehicles? Everything. Kevin nodded, already typing. Meanwhile, Sophia Patel entered with the final forensic report on the study. I've finished the blood pattern reconstruction. Emma looked up, and Sophia spread several diagrams across the table. I think we've been slightly wrong. Ben frowned. Wrong how? Wa believed Thomas was confronted immediately. She pointed to a series of microscopic blood droplets. He wasn't. Emma leaned closer. What happened? Sophia traced the pattern. Thomas entered, placed groceries in the kitchen, went into the study, opened the cedar box, read something, then she stopped. There was a conversation. Daniel looked surprised. You can tell that. Sophia nodded. The blood evidence says he remained standing. No struggle, no panic, no overturned furniture. Emma quietly added, he knew the person. Sophia continued. They spoke for at least several minutes. Ben frowned. So why kill him? Sophia looked toward Evelyn Shaw. The medical examiner answered. The fatal wound entered from the front. Emma nodded. Face to face, no ambush. No surprise attack. Thomas Walker had looked his killer in the eyes. That mattered. Lisa suddenly spoke. I found transfer marks. Everyone turned. She placed 2 enlarged photographs side by side. These came from the chair. Emma looked carefully. 2 different fabric impressions, blue polyester, brown wool. Daniel frowned. I thought the blue fibers came from the knife. They did. Lisa nodded. But these are different. And Emma slowly understood. 2 people. Lisa nodded. One wearing blue work coveralls. The other wearing a brown wool coat. Ben looked at the reconstruction board. So one attacks. The other stages. Sophia pointed toward another blood transfer. The body couldn't have been moved by one person. Emma looked at the measurements. Weight. Angle. Lift marks. Sophia was right. 2 sets of movement. 2 different heights. Daniel quietly whispered. We've been hunting one killer. Emma shook her head. Nope. We've been hunting a team. Kevin suddenly looked up from his computer. I've got Nathan Cole. Everyone turned. Alive? Yes. We're. Kevin hesitated. This gets interesting. Try me? Nathan Cole didn't disappear. He changed jobs. What does he do now? Kevin stared at the screen. He works. For Blackridge County. Silence. Ben frowned. In what department? Kevin slowly rotated the monitor. Facilities maintenance. Courthouse. Archive building. Emma felt the room grow still. Nathan Cole, the laborer who helped build the hidden compartment, now worked inside the courthouse, the very building where records disappeared, where deed books vanished, where Thomas's package had arrived. Daniel slowly shook his head. So this thing never ended. Emma nodded. It became institutional. Captain Brooks looked toward Emma. What are you thinking? Emma walked to the evidence board. She moved photographs into a new arrangement. Thomas, Matthew, Whitmore, Nathan Cole, Michael Donovan, fire shield. The courthouse. Then she stepped back. The murder wasn't committed to steal the documents. Ben looked at her. No. Emma shook her head. They already knew where the documents were. She tapped the cedar box. They came. Because Thomas had finally understood what they meant. Silence settled across the room. Kevin's phone chimed. He opened another recovered personnel file. Then his expression changed. Emma. What now? I found Nathan Cole's emergency contact. Emma looked up. Family. Kevin swallowed. No. Employer reference. Ben frowned. Ooh. Kevin enlarged the document. Across the page, one signature appeared. Approved by Matthew Harrison. Not Matthew Hale. Matthew Harrison. The man everyone had been trying to find. The man Thomas Walker had trusted. the man who had disappeared after the murder. The conspiracy had just become something far more dangerous. Because for the first time, Emma had evidence suggesting that the victim's closest ally might also have been working alongside one of the killers. Emma Hayes had reached the point every detective hopes for and fears. The evidence was finally beginning to agree with itself. That didn't mean the case was solved. It meant every wrong theory was about to collapse. Sunday morning began with one objective: find Matthew Harrison. Kevin's overnight search had paid off. A utility account, a fishing license, a property tax payment, all under the Harrison name. 30 miles north of Blackridge. Ben looked at the address. Sabin by the lake. Daniel grabbed his jacket. If this turns into another abandoned building, I'm requesting hazard pay. Emma smiled. You don't get paid enough to negotiate. I was afraid you'd say that. The cabin sat alone beneath towering pine trees. An older man stepped onto the porch before they reached the door. Gray beard, baseball cap. Kind eyes. Emma recognized him immediately. The man from the photograph. Matthew Harrison. He looked at Emma. I've been waiting. Ben quietly muttered. Why does everyone keep expecting us? Daniel shrugged. Maybe we're predictable. Matthew invited them inside. The cabin walls were covered with framed photographs. Thomas Walker appeared in many of them. Fishing, building birdhouses, laughing over coffee. Emma immediately understood. These weren't casual friends. They were brothers in everything except blood. Matthew noticed her expression. Thomas saved my family. Emma sat opposite him. We need the truth? Matthew nodded. I know. He didn't ask for a lawyer. He didn't ask why they were there. Instead, he reached beneath a small table and placed another cedar box in front of Emma, smaller than the original, identical craftsmanship. Thomas had built it. This is the duplicate. Emma slowly opened the lid. Inside, neatly wrapped in wax paper, were copies, birth records, marriage licenses, land surveys, letters, receipts, and one leather-bound ledger. Sarah Mitchell carefully opened it. Her face changed almost immediately. What is it? She looked toward Emma. It's an accounting book. Emma frowned. For what? Sarah slowly turned another page. Every entry listed a property, its legal owner, its recorded owner, and the difference, year after year, generation after generation. Ben stared at the columns. They collected rent from land they never legally owned. Sarah nodded. For 54 years. Emma began adding the figures. Even conservatively cuts, the total exceeded $12 million. No one spoke. Daniel finally whispered. So this wasn't about one house. Emma shook her head. No. It was about an empire. Matthew quietly continued. Thomas found the ledger inside the original cedar box. Hay finally understood. Emma looked at him. Who kept the ledger? My brother. Richard? Matthew nodded. He spent decades documenting everything. Why didn't he tell anyone? Matthew looked down. Because he couldn't prove who started it? Judge Whitmore quietly added, and accusing powerful families without proof would have destroyed innocent people. Emma looked back at Matthew. Why disappear after Thomas died? Matthew's shoulders slumped. Because Thomas called me. Silence. Ben leaned forward. When? Wednesday afternoon? What did he say? Matthew closed his eyes. He said, They know. Burn your copies. I'll handle the originals. Emma quietly asked, Did you? Matthew slowly shook his head. I couldn't. He looked toward the cedar box. I owed Richard. I owed Thomas. Kevin interrupted through the conference speaker. I've got Nathan Cole's financial records. Emma looked up. Talk to me. Large cash deposits. Every year. No legitimate source. Where from? Kevin highlighted one company. Blackridge Heritage Holdings. Sarah frowned. I've never heard of it. Kevin smiled without humor. That's because it doesn't officially exist anymore. and Emma stared at the screen. The company had dissolved. 3 days after Thomas Walker's murder. Ben quietly said, "They cleaned house." Emma nodded. They thought they'd won. Lisa entered carrying the final forensic comparison. "The chair reconstruction is finished." Emma walked over. "What did we miss?" Lisa pointed toward the diagrams. Was assumed the chair was moved after Thomas died. Emma nodded. It was. But not by the killer. Silence. "What?" Lisa spread additional photographs across the table. "Look at the blood transfer." Emma studied them carefully. Then she saw it. The chair had been dragged. The body hadn't. Evelyn Shaw stepped beside her. "The lividity confirms it." Emma looked confused. "Explain." "The body was already beginning to settle before it was placed upright." Ben frowned. "So Thomas died on the floor." Evelyn nodded. "Near the fireplace." Emma suddenly looked at the wall scan. The hidden cavity. The footprint. Everything aligned. Thomas entered the study. He spoke with someone he trusted. A second person emerged from hiding. Thomas was stabbed. He collapsed beside the fireplace. Minutes later, the killers cleaned the floor, lifted the body into the chair, repositioned the furniture, armed the alarm, locked the front door. Left. Daniel frowned. "Wait." And Emma looked toward him. "If they left, how'd they lock the door from outside?" And Emma walked silently toward the whiteboard. She wrote one sentence. "Ash, who locked the house?" Note. How? Who? She replayed Sarah Walker's original statement. The firefighters had forced open the front door. The key had never been found. Emma's eyes widened. She remembered where the house keys had been discovered. Inside the kitchen trash. Not outside. Inside. Ben watched her. "What is it?" Emma slowly smiled. "The killer didn't lock the front door." Silence. Daniel blinked. "What?" Emma turned toward the floor plan. "They locked the back door." Everyone stared. Kevin immediately pulled up the architectural drawings. The rear entrance used a self-locking deadbolt. It locked automatically when closed. The front door did not. Emma pointed to the plan. The killer left through the back, pulled it shut. It locked itself. Ben looked stunned. "The front door?" Emma nodded. "Thomas locked it himself. When he came home. No elaborate mechanism. No secret passage. No impossible escape. Just one incorrect assumption. Made on the very first day of the investigation." Emma looked around the room. The impossible murder was never impossible. At that exact moment, Kevin's computer chimed again. His expression hardened. "Emma, what now?" "I found the incorporation papers for Blackridge Heritage Holdings." And Emma waited. They weren't signed by Nathan Cole. Then who signed them? Kevin enlarged the scanned document. The signature appeared slowly. Clear. Elegant. Undeniable. Michael Donovan. The former county building inspector. The man who approved the hidden wall. The man connected to Fire Shield. The man no one had seen in 9 years. Emma looked at Ben. For the first time, we're looking at the person who planned all of this. And somewhere beyond Blackridge, Michael Donovan was still free. The investigation had begun with a locked door. Now, it was chasing a man. Sunday afternoon, headquarters felt different. No one was guessing anymore. They were verifying. Emma stood before the evidence board. Every photograph, every document, every timeline, every piece finally had a place. Only one space remained empty. Michael Donovan. Captain Brooks entered carrying a folder. "We found him." Emma looked up. "Olive?" Brooks nodded. "Utilities under another name. Small farmhouse. Outside Ashford." Ben grabbed his jacket. "Let's move." Daniel stood. "I assume this isn't the kind of interview where donuts are appropriate." Ben looked at him. "No?" Daniel sighed. "I keep hoping." The drive took less than an hour. The farmhouse sat at the end of a gravel road surrounded by overgrown fields. The mailbox carried no name. The curtains were closed. Emma stepped onto the porch. She knocked once. Nothing. Twice. The door opened. Michael Donovan looked older than his personnel photograph. His hair had turned completely white. His shoulders sagged. He studied Emma's badge. I wondered how long it would take. Emma had heard those words before. Too many times. Would like to ask you some questions. Donovan stepped aside. I imagine you would. Inside, the house was immaculate. Not luxurious, not neglected, simply organized. Ben noticed filing cabinets lining one wall. Locked. Emma noticed something else. No family photographs. No personal decorations. Just records. Donovan followed her gaze. I've always preferred facts, Emma answered quietly. Facts usually don't need to be hidden. He almost smiled. No. But people do. Daniel whispered to Ben, I officially don't trust philosophers. Ben replied, noted. The Emma placed the incorporation papers on the table. Blackridge Heritage Holdings. Donovan looked at them without surprise. I signed them. Sarah Mitchell opened another folder. You created shell companies. You transferred land. You concealed ownership. Donovan nodded. Yes. Emma waited. He wasn't denying anything. He wasn't arguing. He simply accepted the evidence. Why? Donovan looked toward the window. Because correcting it would have destroyed half the county. Silence. Emma asked. Explain. For decades, clerk. Banks loaned money against those properties. Homes were built. Businesses opened. Children inherited them. He looked back at Emma. If the original records became public, every title would be challenged. Sarah slowly nodded. It would be chaos. It would. Donovan folded his hands. I chose stability. Emma kept her voice calm. You chose fraud. Donovan didn't argue. Yes. Ben leaned forward. And Thomas Walker discovered it? He did. What did you do? I asked him to stop. Emma frowned. You met him? Donovan nodded. Tuesday. The day before he died. What happened? He refused. He said the rightful heirs deserved the truth. Emma watched him carefully. And then, I left. Alive. Unharmed. Ben placed another photograph on the table. Nathan Cole. Donovan's expression changed. Only slightly. You know him. I hired him. For what? Construction? Maintenance. Odd jobs. Emma leaned forward. Did he know about the records? Donovan answered after a long pause. Not at first. Sarah asked. Later? Yes. Emma could hear the regret in his voice. Real regret. Not rehearsed. Kevin called through Emma's earpiece. Emma? I've decrypted another accounting file. Go ahead. The shell company stopped making payments. The day after Thomas died. Emma looked toward Donovan. You expected the problem to disappear. Donovan shook his head. No. I expected the documents to disappear. Emma stared at him. You believed someone else would retrieve them. Yes. Woo. I don't know. Silence. Ben frowned. You don't know. Donovan slowly shook his head. I received instructions. From who? I never knew. Emma didn't believe him. Then she noticed something. Fear, not guilt. Fear. He wasn't protecting himself. He was protecting someone else. Lisa quietly entered the room. She had been searching the filing cabinets with a warrant. Emma. She carried a weathered ledger. Found this. Donovan immediately stood. No. For the first time. Emotion. Emma opened the ledger. Inside were handwritten notes dating back 30 years. Meetings, payments, property transfers, initials, never full names. But one page had been bookmarked. Thomas Walker. Meetings scheduled. Tuesday. Outcomes. S refused cooperation. Sis below it. Another entry. Wednesday. Only 3 words. A Cyrus problem unexpectedly solved. Esslacker. Emma slowly looked up. You didn't write this. Donovan hesitated. No. Who did? He looked away. I can't answer. Ben slammed his hand lightly on the table. Someone murdered Thomas Walker? No. You knew they planned it. I didn't. Emma believed him. Because the wording mattered. Problem unexpectedly solved. Whoever wrote that hadn't expected Thomas to die. They had expected him to surrender. Captain Brooks stepped forward. Michael Donovan, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, evidence tampering, and obstruction. Donovan nodded quietly. I understand. As Brooks escorted him outside, Emma remained in the farmhouse. Something still didn't fit. She opened the final drawer of Donovan's desk. Inside, only one item remained. A cassette recorder, old, dusty, a handwritten label. If anything happens to me, Emma exchanged a glance with Ben. Daniel looked at the tape. I suddenly missed digital files. Kevin located an old cassette player in the patrol vehicle. The tape crackled as it began. Michael Donovan's voice filled the room. Chur? If you're listening to this, Score then Thomas Walker is probably dead. Chor, and if Thomas is dead, Chor then the wrong people found him first. Emma listened without moving. Chor, I am guilty of hiding the truth. Chor, I am guilty of protecting a lie. Chor, but I did not kill Thomas Walker. The tape hissed. Then another voice entered the recording. Not Donovan's. A second man. Calm, measured, almost friendly. He spoke only one sentence. Chor, if Walker refuses, Chor will move to phase 2. The recording ended abruptly. Silence filled the room. Ben looked toward Emma. Who was that? Emma slowly removed the cassette. I don't know. Daniel frowned. So Donovan wasn't running the operation? Emma shook her head. No, he was following orders. Kevin's computer chimed from headquarters. His voice came through the speaker. Emma. I think I identified the second voice. Everyone waited. Kevin sounded almost stunned. The voice belongs to someone we've already interviewed. Emma's heartbeat slowed. Not from fear. From certainty. The investigation was finally closing. Who is it? Kevin answered quietly. It isn't Michael Donovan. It isn't Nathan Cole. It isn't Matthew Harrison. A long pause followed. Then, it's Judge Arthur Whitmore. Emma Hayes had learned something else over the years. Evidence could tell the truth. Evidence could also be arranged to tell a lie. The cassette recording had changed everything. Or, someone wanted it too. Monday morning began inside the audio laboratory. Kevin adjusted a pair of headphones. I've cleaned the recording as much as I can. Emma stood behind him. What did you find? The tape wasn't recorded all at once. Ben looked up. What do you mean? Kevin highlighted 2 waveforms. The background noise changes. The first voice, he pointed at the screen, was recorded in Donovan's office. He pointed at another section. The second voice wasn't. Daniel frowned. So somebody spliced it together. Kevin nodded, professionally. Emma felt a knot loosen. The second voice. Kevin removed his headphones. It really is Arthur Whitmore. Silence. Ben finally spoke. So he lied. Emma slowly shook her head. Not necessarily. Captain Brooks looked confused. He told us he'd spoken with Donovan. Emma nodded. And we know they worked together. She looked back at Kevin. When was Whitmore's recording made? Kevin smiled. That's the interesting part. He enlarged another analysis. The audio contains a radio weather bulletin. Emma leaned closer. Can we date it? I already did. He turned the monitor. The bulletin had aired 9 months before Thomas Walker was murdered. Daniel blinked. So somebody took an old conversation and attached it to Donovan's confession. Emma nodded. To make Whitmore sound like he ordered the murder. Ben exhaled slowly. Someone wanted us chasing the wrong mastermind. Emma picked up her notebook. Again, Kevin's phone chimed. I've got Nathan Cole's location history. The room became quiet. Cell phone records, vehicle GPS, fuel purchases, everything lined up. Nathan's truck entered Willow Lane at 3:52 p.m. hours before Thomas arrived home. Emma nodded. The grocery delivered. Kevin continued. He never left. Ben frowned. Not once. Kevin shook his head. No. The truck remained parked behind the neighboring vacant house. Emma drew another line on the timeline. 4:18 p.m. Nathan accepts the grocery delivery. 9:41 p.m. Thomas arrives home. 9:53 p.m. Alarm armed. Everything fit, except one detail. Emma looked up. Where was the second person? Kevin opened another report. No phone. No vehicle. No electronic trace. Daniel rubbed his forehead. So one killer disappears into thin air. Emma walked toward the evidence board. No. They disappeared because we've been looking for technology. She tapped the church map. The second person walked. Ben immediately understood. From the church. Emma nodded. The wooded trail. Kevin overlaid the old survey map onto a satellite image. A narrow footpath connected the church property to the rear of Thomas Walker's lot, hidden by trees. Invisible from the street. Daniel stared at the screen. So one killer waits inside. The other approaches from the back. Emma completed the sequence. They never arrived together. Lisa entered carrying one final laboratory report. I've matched the boot print. Everyone turned. Nathan Cole, work boots, size 11, perfect correspondence. Ben smiled for the first time all morning. We've got him. Lisa wasn't finished. The brown wool fibers. Emma looked up. Go on. They don't belong to Whitmore. Silence. They belong to a vintage overcoat. Daniel frowned. That's oddly specific. Sophia stepped in behind Lisa. The wool contains natural lanolin and hand stitching. Modern coats don't use that construction. Emma's eyes drifted toward the photographs from Matthew Harrison's cabin. Matthew. Always wearing the same old brown coat. Ben followed her gaze. No. Emma answered quietly. I don't think so. Why not? Because Matthew's DNA isn't anywhere in the study. She paused. But someone wanted us to think it was. Another planted clue. Another false trail. The investigation had become a maze built by someone who understood police procedure. Captain Brooks entered. Found Nathan? Looked up sharply. Where? He was cleaning out a maintenance bead behind the old courthouse. Ben grabbed his handcuffs. Let's go. Nathan Cole didn't run. He simply stood beside his pickup truck, watching the detectives approach. Emma noticed the same slight limp Alan Pierce had described. Nathan Cole. He nodded. I figured this day would come. Emma showed the arrest warrant. You're under arrest for the murder of Thomas Walker. Nathan looked genuinely confused. I never killed Thomas. Ben stepped forward. We have your footprint. You accepted the grocery delivery. You hid inside the house. Nathan lowered his head. Yes. Silence. Daniel whispered, well, that's a start. Emma kept her voice steady. You were inside that house? Why? Nathan answered quietly. I was supposed to scare him, nothing more, nothing less. Emma watched his face, no deception, only exhaustion. Who told you that? Nathan hesitated. I don't know his real name. Ben frowned. You worked for him. I met him twice. Where? Nathan looked toward the courthouse. He always called from pay phones. Emma asked, what happened Wednesday night? Nathan closed his eyes. I waited behind the fireplace. Thomas came home. He opened the cedar box. We talked. You talked. Nathan nodded. I told him people wanted the documents. What did Thomas say? Nathan smiled sadly. He told me, truth doesn't belong to whoever is strongest. Emma wrote every word. What happened next? Nathan swallowed hard. The other man came out. Silence. Ben frowned. There was another man inside the house? Nathan nodded. I didn't know he was there. Emma felt every detective instinct ignite. You didn't know? No. I thought I was alone. What did he do? Nathan's voice trembled. He stabbed Thomas. The room fell silent. Nathan looked physically ill remembering it. I never touched him. I froze. He told me. Nathan stopped speaking. Emma waited. What did he tell you? Nathan whispered, help me move the body, or you'll go to prison with me. Ben slowly lowered his notebook. Everything suddenly fit. 2 offenders. Only 1 murderer. Nathan hadn't come to kill. He had come to intimidate. Someone else had escalated the crime. Emma quietly asked the final question. Did you see his face? Nathan nodded. Yes. Everyone leaned forward. Emma spoke softly. Who killed Thomas Walker? Nathan looked directly into her eyes. Then quietly said, It wasn't Arthur Whitmore. It wasn't Michael Donovan. It wasn't Matthew Harrison. He took a long, shaky breath. It was... Before he could finish, a single gunshot echoed across the courthouse parking lot. Nathan staggered backward, then collapsed. Chaos erupted. Officer down! Call an ambulance! Ben dove behind the patrol car. Emma spun toward the rooftop across the street. Nothing. No movement. No second shot. Daniel dropped beside Nathan. Stay with us. Nathan struggled to breathe. His hand closed around Emma's sleeve, with the last of his strength. He whispered one word, Steward. Then his eyes closed. Emma looked toward Judge Whitmore's title written on the evidence board, the Steward. For days she had believed it referred to Arthur Whitmore. Now she wasn't so sure. Because Nathan hadn't said, the judge. He had said, Steward, as if it wasn't a person, but a role, passed from one individual to the next. Emma Hayes had learned one final lesson. Every conspiracy begins with a choice, and every conspiracy survives. Because ordinary people convince themselves they're protecting something greater than the truth. The ambulance disappeared into the distance. Nathan Cole was still alive. Barely. Dr. Evelyn Shaw stood beside Emma. The bullet passed through his shoulder. Emma looked up. He'll live. Evelyn nodded. If we're lucky. Ben walked over carrying an evidence bag. The slug. Lisa accepted it without a word. Fresh rifling. Professional ammunition. Kevin's phone buzzed almost immediately. I've got traffic cameras. Emma answered. Show me. A black sedan. Parked 3 blocks away, leaving less than 30 seconds after the shot. Its license plate stolen. Daniel sighed. These people really hate making things easy. Emma almost smiled. They've been doing this for decades. They've had practice. Hexco back at headquarters. Kevin replayed Nathan's final word. Steward. Again. And again. Emma stared at the evidence board. Judge Arthur Whitmore. Michael Donovan. Thomas Walker. Richard Hale. Matthew Harrison. One thing connected them all. None had inherited their position. They had accepted it. Sarah Mitchell quietly spoke. What if steward isn't a title someone earns, but a responsibility someone receives? Emma turned toward her. Go on. Sarah opened the leather ledger. The final page had been overlooked, not because it was hidden, because everyone had assumed it was blank. She tilted it beneath a desk lamp. Faint ink appeared. A handwritten list. 1884, 1912, 1938, 1967, 1989. Next to each year, a different name. At the top of the page, only 2 words. This. The steward Daniel frowned. So it's a succession list? Sarah nodded. Every generation, one person became responsible for protecting the secret, not enriching themselves, not leading an organization, simply maintaining it. Emma looked at the final name. Michael Donovan. Below it, a blank line. He had never chosen a successor. The chain had broken. Ben slowly exhaled. So Donovan wasn't trying to expand the conspiracy. He was trying to end it. Emma nodded. But he couldn't admit the truth without exposing decades of fraud. Kevin interrupted. I've finished tracing the shell companies. Everyone turned. The money never went to Donovan. It never went to Whitmore. It barely went to Nathan. Then where? Kevin enlarged a banking report. Millions of dollars, transferred over decades, always ending at charitable land trusts, historical preservation funds, scholarships, public libraries. Silence filled the room. Daniel blinked. What? They weren't getting rich. Sarah slowly shook her head. Numpu. They were preserving the county. Emma folded her arms. They convinced themselves the ends justified the means. Ben answered quietly. And eventually they couldn't tell the difference. Estes. Nathan regained consciousness just before sunset. Emma visited alone. He looked exhausted. I'm sorry. Emma pulled up a chair. I know. He stared at the ceiling. I never wanted anyone dead. I believe you. He closed his eyes. The man. And Emma waited. Who stabbed Thomas? Nathan swallowed painfully. He wasn't part of the old group. What? Emma frowned. What do you mean? He was hired. Silence. A fixer. He said people like Donovan had become weak. He wanted everything destroyed. Emma leaned forward. Name. Nathan whispered. Elias Mercer. Kevin searched the database from headquarters. Within seconds. A match. Former military contractor. Private security consultant. Multiple aliases. No permanent address. Daniel looked toward the screen. So the steward didn't kill Thomas. Emma slowly nodded. The conspiracy created the opportunity, but an outsider committed the murder. Captain Brooks entered the room. We found his vehicle. Abandoned. Burned. Professional. Again. Emma wasn't surprised. Some people vanish for money. Others disappear because that's what they're trained to do. Actress 2 weeks later, the courthouse overflowed with reporters. Sarah Mitchell filed emergency petitions reopening every fraudulent property transfer connected to the Harrison estate. A special judicial commission would oversee the process. Families who had unknowingly benefited from the fraud would not lose their homes overnight. Instead, compensation funds would be created. The rightful heirs would finally be recognized. Justice, without destroying innocent lives. Judge Arthur Whitmore voluntarily surrendered his law license. Michael Donovan pleaded guilty to conspiracy, fraud, evidence tampering, and obstruction. Nathan Cole accepted responsibility for his role in staging the crime scene and agreed to testify against everyone involved. For the first time in over half a century, the truth entered the public record. Casefiles. Emma returned to Thomas Walker's house one final time. The evidence had been cleared, the furniture removed. The study sat empty. Sunlight poured through the windows. Matthew Harrison waited quietly beside the fireplace. He handed Emma a sealed envelope. Thomas asked me to give you this. If someone honest solved the case. Emma carefully opened it. Inside was a single handwritten letter. True detective, if you're reading this, then someone refused to let the truth stay buried. I wasn't protecting land. I was protecting people until the truth could be told without creating another injustice. If you solve this case, you already know something most people never learn. Justice isn't choosing one side over another. It's refusing to stop looking when every answer seems good enough. Don't let certainty become your blind spot. That's where the worst mistakes begin. Thomas Walker. Emma folded the letter carefully. Matthew looked around the empty room. He would have liked you. Emma smiled softly. I wish we'd met under better circumstances. Wow, late that evening, Emma finally arrived home. Dexter, her ginger cat, sprinted across the hallway and immediately demanded dinner. Daniel was already sitting on her porch, holding a pizza box. Emma stared at him. How did you get here before me? Daniel shrugged. I solve important mysteries. Emma looked at the pizza. You mean dinner? I absolutely mean dinner. She laughed. The first genuine laugh she'd allowed herself in days. Daniel looked relieved. There she is. Ben arrived moments later carrying coffee. You two started without me. Daniel pointed at Dexter. I was negotiating with management. Dexter ignored him completely. Ben shook his head. He still doesn't like you. Daniel sighed dramatically. I've accepted that our relationship is professionally distant. Emma opened the front door. Come inside. For the first time since Thomas Walker's body had been discovered, the case was over, mostly. Across town, inside an evidence warehouse, Lisa Grant sealed one final box. Case numbered as MC Reos Wonders. She paused before placing it on the shelf. Something rattled inside. She opened the box again. Tucked beneath the false bottom of the cedar ledger was a small brass key. No label. No tag. No explanation. Lisa frowned. That's strange. She picked up the phone. Emma. I think we just found the first clue. To your next case. The line went silent. Then Emma smiled. Looks like tomorrow starts early. The mysteries of Blackridge were over. But midnight case files begun. Had only just begun.